Good evening. Welcome to the Goffstown Board of Selectmen's meeting, June 21st, 2010. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Chairman Scott Gross will be late. I don't know exactly how late, but he'll be back sometime later during the meeting. And the first order of business is a pledge of allegiance. Would everybody please rise? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to hold off on the minutes until we have a full board. Next item is announcements. Do we have any announcements?
We don't.
Okay. Any members of the board have any announcements? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Next item is public comment. At this point, the board will take comments from members of the public who are here, who do not have an appointment with the board. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, you're welcome. If not, we're going to move on to the next item, which is our auditor's report, Frank Byron and Matt Angel from Melanson Heath and Company. Just want to ask, we're a little ahead schedule. Are you all set?
Yeah.
I didn't want you to...
Frank isn't here, so.
Oh, okay. I didn't want you to give your whole presentation, all of a sudden Frank walk in.
Well, he may.
That's quite possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to delay your
I presume
evening.
the board would maybe like a copy of the audit in front of them. I know it was sent to you electronically, but, and I would appreciate it at the end of the presentation if you could return these to me if you don't have use for them. I have more.
Did you get one?
I have printed my own.
Okay.
Steve?
you.
Okay, you're all set. Sue, you have one. Do you need one to follow, Frank? Okay.
This is my copy, I can mark in it, Jim?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I haven't given you a final copy yet. Hi, Frank, come on in. Have a seat. You're up. Oh, no, you're it now.
You can sit there, Janice.
Oh, you don't know what they just said about you.
That's okay.
It was all good, Frank.
All right.
We're, just so Frank's aware, we're a few minutes ahead of schedule.
Oh, okay, good.
But you guys are on.
All right, okay. Good evening. My name is Matt Angel. I'm from Melanson Heath, and I'm a manager there. This is Frank Byron. He's the president of the company. And tonight, I'm going to give the presentation on the financial statements. There is no management letter this year. We didn't have any comments that were worthy mentioning, okay? We were hired
That's a good thing.
That is
Yeah,
a good thing.
that is a
Yes,
good
that's
thing.
very good.
Okay.
I think this is the first time in history that I know of.
Well, I think this is the second time we've done this to Goffstown. I
Really?
think it was, the last time was like 8 years ago.
Right, it was.
Yeah,
I
and
believe.
then,
All right, boy, I don't ever remember that, but,
yeah.
And you've been finance director since,
but, you know, as soon
And
as
yours
it's
too.
possible.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I guess I'd like to add that, and the reason is because we have the right people in the right seats on the bus. That's why.
No, gotta make sure the bus is going to the right place, though.
There's no one under the bus.
All right, we were hired to give an opinion on the financial statements. Really, we're trying to, in the opinion, we're saying whether the financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And if you turn to the page right after the index, that's the letter that we were hired to provide to you. And that letter has a clean opinion, so that means that there are, the financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, which is the cleanest opinion that you guys can possibly get, okay? So let's move on to page 3. Page 3, this is the management discussion and analysis. And basically what it does, it puts down in a narrative format the financial statement numbers that we're going to present this evening. So this goes between pages 3 and 10, so we're going to skip those and just go to page 10. page 10, this is the entity-wide financial statements, okay? The column on the left, which is the governmental activities, deals, what that is that's collapsing all of your governmental funds together, not the sewer fund, and then presenting them in an accrual format, okay? And then to the right, this is your sewer fund. That's the business type activities, okay? I'm not gonna go into great detail tonight with this particular page, because I don't think it's gonna really mean much to you this evening. But what I wanna point out is, down near the bottom, at the bottom of the liabilities, you'll see other liabilities net of the current portion. In that number of $1.2 million is your other post-employment benefits, or what we call as GASB 45 liability. That's your OPEB. And that in that number is $369,000. Now that's 1/30 of your overall liability. It's gonna increase by about that much every year until it's funded, okay?
Which line are you talking about
It's,
again?
if you were to look at that page, it's the last one, the liabilities, it's near the bottom. It just says other liabilities net of current portion,
Okay.
okay? So that other liabilities makes up of your landfill for about $850,000 and compensated absences for about 156. I just wanted to point out that this is new this year for you guys, is reporting GASB 45. Actually, I think it's your second year.
Second year.
Second year.
Yeah.
So it's increasing now.
180.
Right. Okay? All right. I'm gonna skip the next page, which is the statement of activities. That's a corresponding page to the prior one. And go to page 12. Now, these are the balance sheets for the governmental funds, okay? The column on the left is your general fund. This is your operating fund. And this kind of gives you the overall health of the organization. Now, the column to the right is the non-major or governmental funds. And what you'll find in there, all your other funds kind of collapse together. And you'll find the library fund, the conservation commission, some trust funds like the capital reserve funds are in there. And then let's focus back on the general fund. And let's go down, the second item down, which is property taxes. That's your receivable. Right now, your receivable for property taxes is $1.9 million, and that's roughly equal to where it is in the prior year. So even though the economy is kind of shaky right now, it seems that your taxpayers are paying timely, or as timely as they have in the past, okay? I'm gonna skip on down to the third number up from the bottom, which is gonna be your unreserved general fund balance, okay? In that number of that number is $2,584,829. It's up about $345,000 as compared to the prior year. Now, one of the themes that I want to impart this evening is that your town is healthy financially, okay? As an example, in '09, that number was $2.2 million. And in '07, it was $1,280,000. Okay, so it's a good number, but let's look at it in comparison to your budget overall. If you look at the appropriated budget, which is town, school, and county, it represents 7.36%. Okay, now bond rating agencies want to see that number between 5% and 10%. So you're right now kind of halfway in the range. Okay, so you're in a good place. In the non-major funds, I'm just going to give you a couple of numbers, and let's start out with the Conservation Commission. In there is about $279,000. You have some capital reserve funds for about $720,000. Okay, and then there are other, like EMS is in there as well for $179,000. Okay, I'm going to skip now to page 14. This is your income statement for your governmental funds. If you're a business, this would be your your profit and loss statement, okay? And the most important number here is the third number from the bottom, which is, on the general fund side, is $801,940. This is your net income, okay? You increase your fund balance, your total fund balance, by this amount of money. In the prior year, this was a loss for $774,000. So, you know, but then again, it's okay to have a loss. But let's talk about where this $801,000 comes from. And to do that, I want you to skip 2 more pages and go to the budget versus actual page. Okay. Now, if we start in the far left-hand columns, there's 2 of them there. The original budget is the budgets that's appropriated at town meeting, and then the final budget is the budget as it was at the end of the year. And what you'll see is that there is no change. Okay. And then the actual amounts are based upon the income page that we just came from, but adjusted to the budgetary basis of accounting. And then their variances off to the right-hand side. But let's start here in the variance column at the first number. It says that license permits and fees had a shortfall in comparing the budget to the actual by about $224,000. The reasoning behind that is motor vehicle registration is down. People aren't buying brand new cars. Okay, they're keeping them longer. The next item down, intergovernmental revenue, that shows a positive variance. So you brought in more money for intergovernmental revenue by about $176,000. Now, what's interesting about this is your shared revenues are down by almost 50%. However, there are some one-time revenues in there for a fire truck grant, and then there's also the highway block grant increased over the prior year. Now, if we go down to the last number, and it shows no variance on the budget versus actual for use of fund balance, it's $250,000. So that $250,000 means that the town budgeted for a net income loss for $250,000. Okay, so if everything were to come in exactly the way the budget shows it, on the prior pages it should show a negative $250,000 for net income. All right. However, there's a positive $801,000, and it's really coming back to the town as turnbacks of appropriation. Okay, and you'll find that just below the revenues. Now, some examples are the police department turned back a good chunk of salaries under the public safety line item. Also, there was less snow and ice removal in the current year. And then if you go back down further at the bottom where it says capital outlay, there's a positive variance for $108,000. In there, you completed under budget some sidewalk improvements and some playground equipment. Okay, so overall, you had turnbacks of appropriation of about $836,000. Now that may seem like a large number. However, it is only 2.3% of your budget that includes the school and the county. Okay? You're thinking about that?
Well, is that relevant though? Because the turnbacks don't come back from the school or the county.
No. However, the town kind of, I want to say, is the bank for the school and the county. They don't really, you are collecting the money for them. So, you know, in theory, they could push you guys into a cash shortfall just by requesting money, a lot of money up front, and money that you may not have.
Right.
So by having some reserves allows for a cushion for, you know, cash flow. And you kind of have to look at your budget overall in that sense.
And that's why the 5 to 10% is a recommendation by bonding agencies to
Right.
keep up the total
Exactly.
budgets, the tax commitment for the school and the
Right.
county.
I mean, and on the same thought process, even though we have nothing to do with the sewer commission, we're still responsible for that budget, and they could do the same thing to us.
Exactly.
Or water precincts.
Not so much the water precincts.
But the potential
Yeah.
is there.
The potential could be there, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna switch now to the next page, page 17. These are the proprietary funds. This is just the sewer fund. And only a couple numbers here I want to point out. The first one is they have a strong cash balance. They have $2.7 million. It's up $684,000 from the prior year. Capital assets net of depreciation is only down $658,000. That only represents depreciation expense for the year. Okay. But let's go to the next page. I think this is more important for understanding what's going on in the sewer fund. Here, what you're seeing is consistency from year to year in the charges for service, which is the revenue, the first revenue item. It's about $1.4 million in revenue. However, the most important number is the third number up from the bottom, which is just a positive $3,654. Now that number also includes depreciation expense, which is a non-cash item. If you were to add it back, it would be up over, $658,000, so $660,000 increase. And that's what really brought cash in to your balance sheet. Okay? Now, if we can skip 2 more pages and just go to page 20. And these are your fiduciary funds. The private purpose trust funds are really the scholarships that are being held by the trustees for the benefit of the school department. And then the agency funds are performance bonds. Okay? And then beyond that are the notes to the financial statements. And I wasn't going to really go into that. Questions?
Questions, members of the board?
I think a summary of the financial statements, though, would be your general fund is in very good shape. You have a fund balance that's about 7.5% of your overall budget, which falls right in line with what the bond rating agencies like to see. Your sewer fund has reserves in hand, which can be accumulated for future projects if that's what they're going to be used for. There are other reserves out there, like capital reserve. All of the results of operation were positive during the year, so there's really nothing negative that stands out from these financial statements. It was a very good year, and the end result is that the town is in very good financial shape.
I have one question. In comparison to other municipalities, do you have a sense of where we stand in that?
Well, I could answer. Yeah, I think these numbers are very strong. I'd say top 25% of the municipalities in New Hampshire that we see anyway.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Matt, could you, or Frank, could you explain unreserved fund balance? I saw your number here,
Okay.
but the number that DRA uses, can you point us
Yep.
in that direction?
Okay. You're going to have to turn to page, let's see, 35. In the middle of page 35, there are differences between the way generally accepted accounting principles are and the way that numbers are reported to the state DRA, the Department of Revenue Administration. And what I've done is I've done a reconciliation between these financial statements and those numbers to the DRA. We started out with your unreserved fund balance of $2.5 million, and there's some other items that they don't recognize. We have accrued payroll of about $100,000, deferred revenue, which represents revenue not yet collected. We defer that where the state is recording that as a revenue, and then the state's recording allowance for doubtful accounts on the fund basis, where generally accepted accounting principles doesn't record it on the fund basis, but records it on the government-wide. And so the sum of that is, for the DRA purposes, about just over $4 million for unreserved fund balance. Okay. The way that generally accepted accounting principles looks at that $4 million number is you don't have $4 million of cash to spend. you have about 2.5, okay? Other amounts are locked up in your receivables and in some of your payables that the DRA doesn't really recognize. Okay?
Okay, great. And the bonding agencies look at,
They look at
General.
the generally accepted, the more conservative number.
thank you.
So considering that, we're still good.
Exactly.
So that may, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Fine. And I think I ask this question every year, what comprises the doubtful accounts for municipality?
The way that the DRA calculates the allowance for doubtful accounts, when you go through your budget, the form that you walk out of the DRA with that sets your tax rate, on there is an overlay number.
Right.
Okay? That number increases the allowance for doubtful accounts, and then the abatements are applied against the allowance for doubtful accounts, which lowers it. Okay? So the only way that on
Would
the,
you repeat that, please?
I'm sorry.
Would you repeat what it balances against, what it offsets?
Okay, let me start from the beginning. Overlay goes into the allowance.
Yeah.
Okay, then the abatements are applied to the allowance, thus reducing that number.
Is there anything else that comes out of doubtful accounts besides abatements?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much related to property taxes.
Okay. Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
Jan?
Just a couple of the things I wanted to, I guess, talk about or ask Matt about. With regards to revenue, as compared to how we budgeted revenue at the beginning of the year and where we ended up at the end of the year, what is our percentage of collection, on the mark? Are we within 0.5%?
Oh,
1%?
collection
Taxes you're talking about? Or
No,
overall?
all revenue.
Overall revenue.
Overall revenue?
What's page 16?
It's just nice to know when we estimate revenues, how close do we come to collecting what we think we're going to collect?
Yeah. It's showing a shortfall of revenues by just $79,000 out of a budget of, we're showing $17,624,000. So we think it's just less than 0.5%.
The biggest piece of that was the motor vehicle registrations, which were short, and we're seeing that at all the other towns also.
All right. And the other thing I guess I just want to, make sure we bring to everyone's attention is, this year now, when we work on our next budget cycle, I'll need to budget again for, on OPEB, on actuarial, because we need to do that every 2 years. So we'll need to budget for that in 11 to cover it for the O10 audit. And last time we paid, $3,000-4,000, it was right in that, we budgeted 5 and we paid slightly less than that.
I think you got a real good deal on that, didn't you?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Very.
And also the fact that we did not need a single audit in 2009, but we only missed it by like $30,000, which is 30,000 more, and we would have had to incur the expense of a single audit. We won't escape that next year.
That's a federal grants.
Right.
Yeah.
When all our grants total more than, I guess it's 500,000,
That's correct.
it triggers a single audit. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna need one for O10, and we'll have to budget for that in 11. So those two expenses you'll see in a budget line in addition to the cost of our audit that you don't normally see unless something's happening that triggers that. And if you wanna maintain a nice, clean audit opinion that you can, no pun intended, take to the bank, those are the things that we have to do.
What was the amount of the single audit last time?
Well, I think under contract now, I'm gonna say, is it 4,000?
That sounds about right.
I think it's 4,000.
Plus the OPEB audit.
That's about another 4, so that's gonna add to the cost of what we, have budgeted now for our audit, at least for next year.
Okay, great.
And, again, of course, I can't say enough, no management.
She's just beaming.
I know.
That's good, I guess, and and, everybody's clear that, when we go to the Department of Revenue, they're looking at, this
4 million.
4 million.
fund
Right.
balance, this formula.
Right.
And if you look at the, town report, the balance sheet, and the, information that's in the town report, that number is, pretty darn close, with the exception of overlay, which was my mistake this year, that I didn't book that, entry at the end of the year, when DRA says, okay, 58,000, you've gotta put aside for overlay. I should have reclassified something at the end of the year to take that out of there, so if you look at that amount compared to this, it's off by about $58,000, because I neglected to do that.
Okay.
But that's, at least it kept the number at 4, so.
So that's
I was
because,
glad that digit didn't change.
Jan, that's because somebody wasn't sitting in the seat on the bus at a particular moment in time?
She's absent that day.
Yeah, mistake, or I was jumping around to a lot of different seats.
You
Phil,
were
that's what
keeping
it
an
is.
eye on everybody else, make sure they're in the right
I
seat.
was in a lot of other seats, so.
I know. Any other questions? I guess we're all set.
Okay,
Terrific, thank you very much.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Great, have a good evening.
Hey, you too.
And this will be placed on the town's website, this audit,
Oh,
Jan,
yes.
now that the board has,
Right.
Thanks very much. I have to stay for something else, so.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
very much. Thank you.
Okay. Next item,
If you wanna pass those around, so I get them
Yeah.
back,
yeah,
unless you want the hard
yeah,
copy.
no, I'm going back to that, yeah.
It's just that I have to provide a hard copy to certain,
Oh, I wrote,
agencies.
I wrote in mine.
You wrote on yours? Okay.
I did.
You did too?
I did.
Okay,
Guilty.
all right.
All right,
When
Uh,
I was selecting Provenza, I was here just past 6, I thought there was gonna be a public.
there is gonna be a public comment, we're running ahead. We hit that, there was nobody here, but I'm going back to that at this point.
Oh, good.
So, that's the next, back to that, public comment. At this point, anybody who would like to make a comment to the board, you can come up here and state your name.
Thank you. My name's Bill Bates. I live on Tibbetts Hill Road. I was coming here for a couple of reasons. I'm actually very happy to hear that the town's finances are in good order, and that's great news. I think that's great news. However, the economy we all live in is not so good, and I think you already know that. So I came here really to talk about where we are in terms of the economy, in terms of information, and I'm doing this for a couple reasons, because I think some of these points need to be stressed, and I know we're going into a collective bargaining negotiations, I believe this month or next, so I think it's important to keep this information in mind as we go into that, because the economy at large is not in good shape. Foreclosures in the state of New Hampshire rose 0.1% over this time last year. So we haven't seen the peak of foreclosures, and Goffstown is not without people in trouble. And that doesn't even, according to the people who watch all that, that does not necessarily account for the fact that a lot of people are late. And a lot of banks right now are putting off foreclosures to the second half of 2010 with the idea they're hoping people are going to be employed, so they're trying to give people extra time, which is very admirable. However, according to the people who track real estate closings, they believe the economy, because the economy is not robust, and the economy does right now run the risk of a second or a double dip recession. They're indicating that there will be more foreclosures at the second half of 2010. Personal income is flat right now. It rose a modest 0.1% last quarter, but overall, personal income is very flat, and obviously, that's been a trend that's been very flat for a while, since 2008 or before, and that's because incomes are not growing, and in fact, they've been contracting. Disposable personal income is down 0.2%, And that's an indicator that people do not have extra money. They're paying taxes, they're paying what they need to get by, but personal disposable income is down, and that's not a good trend in terms of seeing our way out of a bad economy. In terms of unemployment, a testimony given to the recent quarterly Federal Reserve regional meeting indicated that unemployment, a return to what we would term as full-time or more full employment, is probably about 24 months away. So that means whether you agree or disagree that we may be slightly heading out of this economy now or heading back into a double dip, it doesn't matter. They're saying unemployment as we remember it in a full employment economy is not going to return for 24 months. And obviously the recent budget passed by the state is very alarming because they passed their budget with a lot of interesting line items, which included some loans and deferrals. And indication is from the reps that I've spoken to is that the budget problem for the next biennium is going to come back, and that potentially affects some of the monies we can expect to see from the state. That will be so the indication is that that's still problematic, and because of unpredictable revenue growth, they're foreseeing troubles that are not going away just because they passed short term in special session. And so with that in mind, I guess what I would like to say to the selectmen is I'd like to see us manage our affairs of state here very conservatively and very frugally going into the new budget year. And I know there's departments with many needs, and you know, years come and go and needs don't go away, and we're all aware of that. But with that in mind, I think we have to manage frugally, and I would indicate that it's time that we consider a budget that comes in underneath last year's budget in the interest of helping out the taxpayers who pay it. And my whole point to that is that regardless of the needs of the community, the needs of the community should never come ahead of the taxpayers. Taxpayers are what pay the community to operate, and in a down economy, regardless of which party that you ascribe to, in a down economy, which we're at, which is apparently compared worse, the worst economy we've seen since the Depression, now is not the time to consider a level or a growth budget this year. People are counting on you to manage, and I've talked to many people, they're counting on you to manage the affairs conservatively, and I would say very frugally in this budget year. And we're not even talking about the fact that I know reevaluation's coming up. So there's a lot of things happening, and I just hope you'll take this information. I get my statistics from the United States Department of Commerce and from notes from the Federal Reserve meetings. So this is all information that's available. If you want the website, I could certainly get it for you. Now, as it pertains to the upcoming collective bargaining agreements, I think a prudent course of action, in my opinion, is to freeze the cost of step increases. I believe a collective bargaining agreement should not be any more than 2 years in duration to get us through a very down economy, especially indicative of what I've just said as far as unemployment being as high as it is, and that return to full employment is not expected to occur in 24 months. I think the most prudent thing would be to have a labor agreement that is no more than 24 months in duration. We should start now to put a stake in the ground in terms of freezing the growth of healthcare costs. In my opinion, we should be capping real dollar cost of healthcare to 2006 levels and capping it for this agreement. I also would say, in terms of for advanced planning purposes, I think the collective bargaining, that it should be noted that because of what's referred to, of course, as Obamacare has been passed by United States Congress, that we should be preparing our union to be prepared to move to Obamacare, not this agreement, but with 2 years' notice, give them plenty of notice that the plan would be to try to switch over to the government-sponsored system that is going to be implemented now, between now and 2 years from now. And it would be prudent notice to give that to them with a few years' notice. We should be freezing compensation and step increases. There should be, and most importantly, so you all have an opportunity to manage the affairs of the town prudently and frugally, I strongly believe that you should be negotiating 2 weeks of, what do we call them here? I would say we negotiate up to 2 weeks discretionary furlough days for all municipal employees, and not that's mandatory, but discretionary, so you have the opportunity, if emergencies come up, you have the opportunity to manage the affairs of the town in a way that if employees can take furlough days to help out the budget situation, you have that opportunity to exercise that. And I think that has to be in a collective bargaining agreement, because based on what I'm seeing elsewhere, that will not go unless it's negotiated up front. With that said, again, in closing, I would just thank you for your time, and I hope, again, that we will think about a frugal and prudent budget going into the new year, especially with the idea that the town's affairs right now are in good shape. I would just hate to see anything, do anything to jeopardize that. And again, I think the town budget committee also agrees that managing frugally is prudent, and I expect that based on the last budget committee vote, that they'll be sending guidance to you for that, and I look forward to working with the town selectmen to help, albeit hard, to help get to the next budget period and do it in a frugal way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to address the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. We have a 6:45 appointment. Are you ready?
Sure am.
Why don't you go have a seat right
Sure.
up here? And I have reports to hand out to everyone,
Okay.
in case you need it.
Jan, if you keep this up, we're gonna have to get you a separate spot to sit at the table.
Oh,
here.
no, you don't have to do
You know, you gotta be sitting at the right place on the bus.
That's right. Right seats on the bus.
I'm not gonna read this report word for word. You guys will have it if you want to read through it.
Okay.
I will just summarize the findings from my collection of data and the prioritized list I've put together for this. So I'll just start out by saying we worked with Jan and Dave Roberge and Mark Urella from Goffstown here to collect data and on energy usage. So we collected data on fuel consumption for both vehicles and buildings, and electricity consumption for buildings and streetlights. So we took all that information, we put it into 2 separate programs, one that's developed by the EPA, and that's called Portfolio Manager, and another called STOCC, which is short for Small Town Carbon Calculator. So, and that was put together by a joint collaboration between the University of New Hampshire and Clean Air, Cool Planet, which is the nonprofit which I work for temporarily, so, as an assistant. And on the second page, I wrote up a short community profile. A lot of this information I just pulled off of the census webpage and from your own town webpage, so I don't think we really need to go through that in any depth. And then I've put a series of photos on here for all the buildings which are included in this data collection. So there's, 9, 12, 15 buildings. And so there's a photo for each building in this. So whenever one building is referenced, you can always go back to this page and see exactly what we're talking about. And then on the next page is a municipal sector analysis. So what we did is I took the data collected and I broke down into 3 sectors of energy consumption. The sectors are also broken down, which are buildings, vehicles, and streetlights. And then those sectors are then again broken down into cost, carbon emissions, and energy emissions or usage. And so the total energy use is the first left-hand chart, and it shows you that roughly a quarter of your total energy use is buildings, and a small percentage streetlights, and then an overwhelming percentage of your energy usage is vehicles. And it's not, the chart is not that much different for emissions, but you could see for costs, the total usage, the total cost of buildings is about 10% higher. So the reason for that is because buildings use electricity, and electricity per BTU is considerably more expensive than a BTU of petroleum, because you're paying for transmission, you're paying for electric infrastructure, and you're paying for the waste of energy from the power generating plant to its end use location. So you lose a lot of electricity in the process.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
On the energy, on the usage on the buildings, here in Town Hall, we have a special program with Public Service. I forgot the name.
Smart.
Yeah, Heat Smart. Were you aware of that?
No, I was not.
Okay, no, we had that in this and I'm not sure, out of the buildings, well, I mean, like, when you take the police station, which I don't think has that, but the usage, certain buildings are gonna use more, like, noticing on here, you have the fire station that's up on, Terrell Hill Road. I mean, obviously, that's not a manned station all the time, so the energy usage is gonna be low, since they have propane heat in there. So, comparison from one building to another, I don't know.
Well, can you give a brief description of that program for me, since I haven't?
Oh, on the Heat Smart, I'll let town administrator, she has to deal with it on a daily basis.
Actually, we only see the negative repercussions
Oh, no.
during the summer.
Right.
No, we agree to let them shut off our air conditioning for 4-hour periods during the summer, should it be during prime time and they need the electric power peak hours, and they need it for other facilities or organizations. So by doing that, and then we have a backup heater, so if it goes down, the heat goes off for 4 hours, because we're all electric heat here. If it goes off for 4 hours, then the charcoal backup in the town clerk's office kicks in.
And they give you a discount for this?
Yes.
Okay. And the town hall building's actually on the prioritized list, and we'll talk about that at the
Okay.
end, because it's not actually the highest user of energy.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
But it's for the wrong reason, so we'll get into
We
Okay.
freeze.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it, yeah. So, we can move on to this chart here if
Absolutely.
you guys want.
Sure.
I think we pretty much summarized what was going on with the pie charts there. And you can see this is a breakdown of the different buildings for which we've collected data. And I say it in that phrase because I'm aware that there's other buildings that the municipality probably owns, but they're either very, very small energy users or abandoned lot or just plain lots, or towns usually ask about the schools, And we don't get involved with the school system because it's very tricky, because sometimes you have administrative units, SAUs, and you could have two towns with one school, and it's just becomes a complicated subject for putting this report together for every town in New Hampshire that we can, so. What you can just see is we documented the type of heating fuel, the size of the building, the total energy usage in BTUs and in electricity and heating, and then a site energy intensity, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but it's just another measure of energy usage. And then the average site intensity for as calculated by the EPA, and I don't particularly really know a lot about this number. I could tell you that what they do is they weight and average for the entire nation. And it's not tremendously accurate because the way we build buildings here is much different than the way they build them in the Midwest or California or Florida. So what they do is they group them into types of buildings like police stations or town halls. But a town hall here is very different than a town hall in Florida, so it's hard to calculate it that way. And then we have an average site intensity for buildings in New Hampshire, and that's a little more accurate of an average. But again, the town hall here is much different than the town hall in Bedford or the fire and police station in Bedford, which they have a safety complex. So again, it's a little difficult. So, but the site energy intensity is an incredibly useful tool, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Down at the bottom, we have a chart which shows electricity, heating, and total energy usage. And you can see the police department is the biggest user of energy in total, but it's also your largest building. So at 11,000 square feet, it's the only building that comes close is the DPW garage. And
Also, it's a 24/7 operation.
yeah, so you guys, and the DPW has emergency operations, so when you got snowstorms, those guys are in full blast mode too, so. And I always get a little scared about these things, because I think people think I'm trying to pick on a certain department, but it's just, we just purely are looking at the data here, and for such a large building, it has the highest energy usage, but it does not have the highest energy intensity, so that's why it's good to look at two different numbers. So the amount of BTUs it uses per square foot of building is actually lower than other buildings in the set. And Fire Station 17 is one that has a higher energy intensity. So,
And how do you arrive at that?
All right,
energy
so-
intensity?
So energy intensity is the measure of BTUs per square foot of building. So if you have a 1,000 square foot building and it uses,
Okay, so you're not taking any account of the hours of operation that the building,
No,
when it's down and when it's shut down?
that's right, there's no consideration of hours of operation.
For example, a scale house, which is 10 by 10 with the window open all day long, in the winter, we're heating the whole environment.
Yeah.
But you're only looking at that 10-foot by 10-foot space.
Yeah, and you can see it's a.
Therefore, it's very high on intensity usage.
Yeah, exactly, that's right. So, the 100 square foot building has an incredibly high energy intensity because there's probably tremendous heat loss on a constant basis, So, but there might be solutions for that. So we can move on to the next page if you want.
Speaker through the glass.
That's right.
Or put Bob outside in the jacket.
A snapshot of the energy use, the animal compound, the West Cemetery shed, and the hazardous waste recycling center, and the scale house. Their combined energy usage only makes up a tiny piece of the town's total municipal energy usage. So I didn't put too much emphasis on those buildings, and there's probably a high likelihood that the energy usage in those buildings can be corrected with behavioral changes. So they're not worth looking at they're worth looking at in isolated manners, but there should be, for this more collaborative and comprehensive audit of buildings, which you guys will be getting from SDES as part of this municipal assistance program. We should be looking at some of your more complex buildings because he's got engineering skills and he can put those to work for you guys for free. So it's money well spent. But this chart here in the middle of the page is site energy intensity, average site energy intensity for the nation and for the state. And so you can see the animal pound scale house and some of those smaller buildings are high, but I set those aside, and what you start seeing is that the fire station number 17 has a fairly high energy intensity. And so there might be heat loss issues in that building. And so Tobias from SES, when he comes out, I think it would probably be a good idea to have him look at that building and see why its heating bill is rather large. And it might have to do with the way that the building's built. There might be air leak or improper insulation or things of that nature. So, but you can also see that the other fire stations fall a little bit higher than the state and national average, and the police department falls just a little bit higher than the state and national average. So, but they're pretty much in line with the averages. So you can feel comfortable that those buildings are pretty much operating within reasonable levels of energy usage in comparison.
Tim, what number on this chart is, you call it the state and national average?
Yes, okay, so there's a color-coded key on the left-hand side.
You're one page back. You're one page ahead right now.
Page 6.
Okay, thank you.
So you see the key? And
Yes,
it gives you
no,
the
I'm okay now.
colors. So all the way on the right-hand side is fire station 17, 18, 19. And you can see the state and national average, and then you can see where Goffstown is in that range. And it's just a little bit, it's about 10% higher, maybe 8% higher. It's not that much higher. And this is part of the prioritization, and I'll go into more depth at the end about where I think you guys should spend your time with Tobias. So we can move on to that chart that you were looking at just on the next page. And this is a third way of looking at energy usage in comparison for the buildings in this report. And you'll see the area of the building, the energy costs per year, and then the energy cost per square foot per year. And you can see, again, the animal pound and the scale house are at nearly $8 a square foot, but they're very small buildings. So the total impact is, under $1,000 a year for those two buildings. You look at the DPW garage, that has energy costs per square foot of 1.28, and it's $14,000 a year. But that doesn't even take into account that that building is burning waste oil, so there's significant savings there. So it's burning waste oil from its own vehicles and waste oil that people are dropping off to the town, and that's free energy. So when you look at that cost and then you look at the energy emissions, you can see the energy emissions is a little bit higher, but it's not out of the park. But it's not in the under 10 pounds per square foot range. The police department, which doesn't benefit from free waste heating oil, you can see its costs are considerably higher. It's almost $40,000 a year for energy usage. And like you said, 24-hour operations, so those guys are basically running two buildings, so to speak. You're running day, running night, so you pay for that.
Plus you have communications.
Yeah, so electronics, and electronics are using energy in pretty intense ways, so. And they're busy in emergencies too. They must hire a lot of people during emergencies to come in, and they have those guys coming in, extra hours, quite a bit of extra hours.
We have a lot of volunteers.
Oh, really? Wow. So, it's good.
Just a quick question. So when we look at the DPW, the cost of energy, you're talking about the waste oil burners, et cetera. You don't You don't have do you have an idea of how many gallons they're burning in waste oil? What percentage of that is their heating costs, or?
Yeah, so what I did is I called Mark Urella and I asked him, what do you think? And it's an estimate, but basically he had a pretty good idea of how they do, because what they do is over the summer they tend to fill up 2 tanks, and they tend to go through those 2 tanks in a year. So it's like a big sinusoidal wave every year. So on a yearly basis, it crests out in the middle of the summer, and then by the end of the winter, it's basically they've tapped it all out. And so he basically gave me the size of the tanks, and he said, "This is how much we're
So
using."
how many tanks do we burn?
I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I'm gonna say I don't even know. It's a considerable amount of money, energy, but all the information is in the 2 software programs that I mentioned at the beginning, the Portfolio Manager and STOCC. And I've given access to Jan for those 2 software programs, so you guys can dig into that information if you want, or I still have access to the programs too, so if you guys want that specific answer, I could email and give you that.
So, for the DPW garage, where you have $14,000 of energy costs, was that above the free oil cost, or was that the equivalent of the free oil?
No, well, I didn't calculate the cost of the free oil, it was
So
free.
This
So,
was actual expenditures of,
above and beyond,
above and beyond
yeah,
of the free oil?
heating oil,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Because they have their, I believe, I can't remember off the top of my head, but because you guys had actually a unique thing, you had somebody come in and do audits on all your buildings, and that's where I was able to get a lot of information about these buildings. And you guys have backup emergency propane tanks in a lot of your buildings. I don't know if DPW is one of them. I think the office might have one, but I know the police and fire station have for sure. And so, but that was a very small portion of the total energy use for those buildings as well.
Yeah, we have one here too.
Yeah, okay. So, and that's just for heating though, right?
No,
Electricity.
Oh, okay.
Town hall's all electric.
Yeah, yes. So that thing kicks in and it runs both the HVAC and the lights, basically. Everything.
Right.
Emergency generator.
Actually, big one. You go out the back door.
You know, the last time I was here was in January, and your heating and cooling system was trying to play catch up. It was chilly in here. So on the last, does anybody else have?
The town administrator's very frugal with the heat. And this finance director?
That's good.
We're gonna move her office to the police station. Hi, chief.
Does anybody else have any other questions before I just give a summary of the recommendations?
Board have any questions? Sue?
All right, well, I'll just run through there's 5 recommendations, and I'm just gonna go
Maybe,
through them.
maybe is this the first time such a comprehensive analysis has been done for all our town buildings?
We've had energy audits of each building done before, but it was mostly for electrical
Right, because
purposes.
it's public service.
Public service did free energy audits.
So, and this one just captures the vehicles.
This
and-
one, yes, this is
And that
most
minor item
comprehensive.
called streetlights.
Well, where they because I got most of their information from them, where they left off, which was each individual building, I picked up and was able to put together a prioritized list. So you can go into both those software programs and see in order which of your biggest buildings are, and any one of these different measurement techniques, which I showed, the cost per square foot, the energy intensity, which is BTU per square foot, or total energy use, so, you know, your dollar costs per year. And so all that is available to you guys as a tool, and,
Great. Any other questions?
Well-
Department heads have any questions? Okay.
So let me just summarize here. I'm gonna go through so I have a 5-point summary of
Right.
recommendations, and that, we won't take too long here. The town of Goffstown should consider a comprehensive vehicle fleet audit, because it's by far the biggest user of energy in the municipality. You guys should probably, somehow try to get a handle on where those energy costs are coming from in a more
Conversion
detailed
to
manner.
propane. for vehicles will make a big difference, and our police cars used to have, police department had vehicles that have propane, that were propane.
CNG, or they run?
No, before CNG, propane, they had
Just-
propane vehicles back in the seventies, I believe, was it, chief?
I live in Nashua, and Nashua's on the cusp of getting a CNG fueling station because they're switching their waste services vehicles over to CNG.
Right.
And then UPS pitched in and said, hey, we'll buy a couple of trucks, CNG trucks. And so it's exciting because now the car dealerships are gonna start offering CNG vehicles because we'll have a fueling station for it. So it's building momentum as we go.
Yep, good.
It's exciting. One of the things I can say is Wednesday is our closeout. You guys were my last town and came pretty close to the end of the project. And Wednesday, we're gonna be talking about how we can start helping towns with collecting information for auditing their vehicles. Because there may be money in the future for this sort of upgrade to towns. Because we're finding that a lot of our towns, majority of their use is in vehicles. So we'd like to Clean Air, Cool Planet, the Conservation Foundation, and the state really want to help where it makes the most sense. And if we can make a bigger impact in vehicles, they'll go that route. So one of my recommendations would be get a handle on how your vehicles are used, when they're used, how much fuel they're using, and how many miles they're driving, and how old they are, and then we can, the next step will be hopefully grants in a year or two that will allow for us to upgrade some of those vehicles that are getting old or outdated or inefficient vehicles. So, something to think about. That's recommendation number one. Number two recommendation would be to target the police department and fire station number 17 as the highest priority buildings for energy retrograde retrofitting. And when Tobias comes to visit with you guys, which is the second portion of this municipal energy assistance program, I would recommend having Tobias look at those two buildings and in depth. And what he'll do is he'll go through each of the buildings over a one-day period, and at the end of the day, he'll make a presentation to you guys, a PowerPoint presentation, showing you the technical reasons why those buildings are having energy usage issues. And he's really good, so that was great. So that's recommendation number two. Recommendation number three is it might make sense to have the town hall building looked at because the town hall building has a particularly suspect energy usage pattern where in the middle of the winter in those coldest days, its energy billing data is very high. So the middle of the winter, those coldest winter days, you guys are getting pretty high energy billing data, billing costs. And so what that says to me is that this building potentially is not, because it's not the highest energy user, it might potentially is not able to keep up with the load. So it's not able to heat as much as the building needs heat. So it might be worth having Tobias look at this, the heating and cooling system in this building and make a recommendation, say, it's fine, or you really do need to look at having a secondary system that kicks in the winter. So, but it's up to you guys to make that judgment. And recommendation number four, it's sort of a boilerplate thing because we're finding that your streetlight energy usage is very low, and it's surprisingly low actually. And when I got the raw data from PSNH, it showed that you guys had a majority of your streetlights were replaced within the
LEDs.
decade. So, and that's probably why your energy usage is so low. And so, traffic lights and park and recreation lights may be an area where you guys can target with things like LED lights, which.
Well, we've been switching over to that.
Yeah. So you guys are ahead of the ball.
Been doing that probably 5 years, I believe, right,
Wow,
Chief?
that's
Switching
great.
over to LEDs. Yeah, we switch over because you can't, to just switch everything over to the LEDs expensive, so we've been doing it piece.
I'll tell you, it's showing up in the data, because we were looking at this, and I was looking at it with my superior, and I said, I wonder if I made a mistake, because their billing is so low, and I did not realize that you guys were already into LEDs at this point, so,
We're on the cutting edge of a lot of things here in Goffstown.
Well, good for you guys. I hope you keep it up, because you're the only town, out of all my towns that I've done this with that is already into it, so that's great. And then, the last recommendation would be perhaps the town starting a local energy committee, so that you guys can have consistent, people who persevere on this subject for your township. And, obviously, the town is proactive about the streetlights, and it's already got audits on its buildings, and it's already been making upgrades, so, you're well into it, and it would be great to have a team that could really consistently look after these things and help move them forward. And, it would be a big benefit to the town, so. And, that wraps up my recommendations.
Great, any questions?
There are two people who are interested in the Energy Committee, and I had an article in
Right.
this week's Goffstown News to create some more interest to get involved with the Energy Committee.
Yeah, they can head up all kinds of programs. One we have right now that's really interesting is the Carbon Challenge. And what it does is it gets the word out to residents about lowering their energy bill, and it sets up a little exercise where they can do a mini audit on their energy usage in their homes with a energy meter, and they write it all down in a chart, and they hand it in, and there's recommendations for them on a web page. It's great. Yeah. And if it leads to energy reductions for the town, that means good things for not having to upgrade your infrastructure, so you wouldn't have to put in new power substations and things like that as the town grows, because you'd be accommodating it with reductions.
I think
as the
some of
town
those
grows.
meters were handed out to local libraries.
Yes, that's right, yes. So, it's exciting and it's worth looking into, so.
Great, any other questions? Other than that, appreciate your hard work.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Sorry it took 6 months, it was a little
Hey.
long,
Listen,
When will
we have a lot of buildings,
You do have, this is my biggest town, so.
a lot of
When
people
will we
here
hear
too.
from Tobias?
I'm gonna send out an email to Tobias. He's swamped because he's the only guy. So there's 14 assistants throughout the entire state, and then there's Tobias doing all these towns. So, I don't know how long it'll take him, but it shouldn't. I will email him and try to get you guys a time frame.
Okay,
Is,
thank you.
is he from your organization or one of these others here?
He's independent, so he's working collaboratively with us, but he runs a business. And so part of the business was they got this grant through the state
Right.
or through Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative to participate, so.
Oh, so these are Reggie funds they're using?
Yes,
Yep.
yes, exactly. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're a couple of minutes early.
Do you want to take, Jan's still here, and she worked hard on this RFP award recommendation for the clock tower. Do you want to go to that part of my report?
Well,
Oh,
it all
she's here.
depends if she's gonna be sticking around.
She isn't.
Oh, okay, well,
She will for this, though.
no,
If
we
you
can,
do
we can do that. We can do
Okay.
that.
The town received 7 timely proposals for the repair and repainting of the clock tower, and they are as follows: Superior Structures, $32,600; Emon Construction, $39,821; W. Ringe Builders, $35,752; Charter Builders, $74,500; Target New England, $34,760; Hannah Smith Contracting, $29,660; and Robert Morgan for $11,960. Jan reviewed all of these proposals, and she did a spreadsheet for you that's in your
Mhm.
packet, and she recommends the low bidder, Robert Morgan and Company, at $11,960.
Any discussion from the board?
Well, I think we're gonna let you be the judge on that one, being the clock fixer.
Okay, well, this
No,
this tower is not, it's not a historical structure, it's not a historical tower, historical clock. But I did have a discussion with Jan this afternoon. My concern was the fact that the low bidder, when I first looked at these, the first thought that came to my mind was that this low bidder is probably gonna knock him out, because he's less than half the low bid, the next bidder. And the bids are in a range of 29 to 35. It seems to be the middle of your range there, with the high one being 74.5 and the 11.9 seem to be are the two extremes. So I did have a discussion with Jan. There are basically work as steeplejacks, so they don't use staging or they don't use lifts. Apparently, according to him, it's not that big of a project. I mean, I have worked on projects where, not Morgan, but similar operations, other steeplejacks have worked, so I'm familiar with how they do work. And my concern that I expressed to Jan was, I just had a concern is, because the railing system that's on there, I just wanna make sure we don't get a Home Depot railing system, that's up there. I mean, that was, because I anticipated the replacement of that railing system probably in the area of about $8,000 for a railing system itself. So, if, you know, that's what I mean, when you look at the rate, you say, why so expensive? Because don't forget, you have 4 sides. So if you break that down, you're looking at approximately $2,000 per side, which is, I mean, not, when you break it down that way, that grade and the material that's up there, it's not an outrageous price for the railings. But I mean, as long as I gave Jan a catalog from Pond, which makes that type of synthetic, they're cast balustrades, and they have the railings and the finials and everything. I think Coastal is a distributor for them. There's another distributor out, there are a couple of distributors, there's another one in Hooksett. But as long as, I mean, the other stuff on the project is pretty straightforward. It's the painting, the scraping, some flashing, replacing some other parts. I think really and I think there's a little bit of roof work and a little bit of repair work to the weather vane. But I think the biggest issue really are the balustrades, the railing system that's up there. So as long as that's, a railing system is compatible to what's up there, I mean,
Something that won't blow away, right?
well, yeah, I mean, I don't wanna look up there and see tiny little balustrades, because don't forget, those corner finials, they're about 16 inches when you get them down. When you look up there, they don't look that big, but
Yeah,
all that's,
we have one, and we showed it to them.
yeah, I mean, and the railings are large. I just don't wanna go up there and have an out of proportion.
Right, it's gotta be proportionate to what's there.
Exactly, so, I mean, as long as, you meet with him and he's gonna give you something that's equivalent to that or whatever, I mean, then I'm fine with it. I don't have a problem with it.
Jan, did these bidders physically look at the tower up close?
The majority did,
Thank you.
yes. Literally went up through the middle of it and looked, took photos, accessed information that,
Including
Yeah.
Mr. Morgan?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question, we had put a $2 million liability insurance, how did we arrive at that number in the RFP?
well, that
Pretty
seems to be
standard.
typical now of what, a lot of companies and businesses are requiring. And that's generally like, you know, their broad umbrella policy.
Mhm.
There are also things about their insurance that will specifically dictate the workers' comp portion and general liability. But that's pretty standard now.
It is standard.
And so they're not having the 2 million wasn't an issue?
Having more, not having more than,
No, they only have 1 million, there's only half of them that have the
I
2
don't know
million.
if that's their general, if that's general liability or their umbrella policy, but when I spoke to him and I pointed these things out in the RFP, he's more than happy to have to comply with that. What it means is, if they get the job, they'll upgrade to that if you require that. But they're not gonna do it if they don't get the job.
Yeah, and it's usually to go from the 1 million to 2 million is not a big issue. It's usually a phone call away to their carrier.
Yeah, because I indicated that I would want that sheet of paper with the town of Goffstown's name on the bottom of it. So typically, a lot of them will give you an example of, here's what I'm gonna give you for coverage, and if I've asked for this and it states that, well, they'll give me more if they get the project. It's just a phone call, and he had over 45 references. I think he's done every steeple, every clock tower possibly north of Boston, west of Boston. And I did call, and the people were more than satisfied and happy, especially with the price. He's an expert in this, and I think the other issue that concerned me about, wow, how come the difference in price is the approach and how they do the work on the tower, old school. We use the old school method. It's not a $10,000 or $15,000 lift and staging that's gonna come in to do a small project. He does projects like that, but this is relatively small, and he feels he can do it, having his guys, you know, anchored in and swinging out there, doing this work.
Nick? So what did we estimate for this project?
When we had gone out once before, like 2 years ago, it went up to about 24,000.
Right.
So, we had estimated
Is that what
about
we budgeted
24.
for?
Yep.
Yeah, the trustees are meeting tomorrow night, and I'm gonna try to make it a point to be here, because when I did speak to the chairman with regards to this, and said, okay, we've got the bids now, you ready? The information that I received was, well, there have been some changes now with regards to how we can use all of this, and we still wanna make sure that the project will qualify. So I said, well, then maybe I better come Tuesday night and see what's going on with that. I'm not ready to go forward yet with the roof bid. I wanted to get this one done first. This needs to be done first before that. But I think I wanna make sure that we're on secure ground with where the revenue is coming from before we go out on that limb with the roof, because that's a much more expensive project. And we just wanna make sure we're gonna get the revenue. The tower really isn't something that can wait. The balustrades are rotten, they're ready to fall off, the wood is deteriorating, and you need to get it now. It's a relatively inexpensive project compared to the roof.
Right.
So, that's it.
But we'll be back with the roof later.
Any other questions? Nick?
Motion to award the clock tower repair project to Robert Morgan Steeple and Building Restoration Company, as per our administrator's report.
Conditioned on final approval of offset and revenue from the Millage and Stock Fund,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And also,
Signed contract.
the appropriate insurance,
That will all be in the contract.
right? The appropriate insurance, and just, checking to make sure that, she's satisfied with the, railing system. I'll second it if that's your motion.
Sure.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Chief?
Alrighty. Jan.
Does he get the, you signed the, swearing in?
I think I did.
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
I did, that should be in.
Yeah, I don't see him in here, so I assume he's got it.
They're in the signature
Oh,
folder.
there it is. I'm looking at this.
Mhm.
Okay. I need that. Okay. That's what I'm looking for.
Mrs. Scott's.
No, who didn't
No.
sign it? Dave, he didn't sign it. Let's get this in there.
You remember those kids.
Okay, just so everybody's aware, our next appointment is swearing in of oath of office and reception for Officer Gregory Hurtig.
Thank you. I'd like to present to the board Officer Greg Pertek. He comes to us with 8 years of law enforcement experience. He just left from the Boston Police Department. He's fully certified with New Hampshire, and he's ready to begin our FTO program, I believe, tomorrow morning. So, he has a degree in criminal justice from Fulton Montgomery Community College. And tonight, his wife Teresa's here with his two children, Victoria and Braden. Greg, come on up.
It's only the beginning, you didn't start yet.
Get used to being told what to do.
Are you all set?
I am.
I'm here, Phil Devanza, Chairman of Board of Selectmen, to swear you in. I'm sure you've had an oath of office before, so you're familiar with this, okay? I have to read though, because I don't do this all the time, okay? So, whereas there is a vacancy in the office of police officer in the town of Goffstown Police Department, and whereas we, the subscribers, have confidence in your ability and integrity to perform the duties of said office, we do hereby appoint you the said Gregory Hurtig, a police officer of the said town, and upon your taking the oath of office and having this appointment and the certificate of said oath of office recorded by the town clerk, you shall have the powers, perform the duties, and be subject to the liabilities of such office until another person shall be chosen and qualified in your stead. And I'm gonna, we'll do the oath.
Okay.
And you'll have to state your name.
All right.
I,
I, Gregory Hurtig.
thank you, do hereby do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially
Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform all the duties
discharge and perform all the duties
incumbent on me as a police officer
incumbent as me as a police officer
according to the best of my abilities,
according to the best of my abilities,
agreeably to the United States Constitution,
gravely to the United States of the Constitution,
rules and regulations of the Constitution,
rules and regulations of the Constitution,
and laws of the state of New Hampshire,
and laws of the state of New Hampshire,
and ordinance of the town of Goffstown.
and ordinance of the town
So
of
help me
Goffstown.
God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Your signature spots on here. Right here. Oh, he's all set, see? Comes prepared.
Just right here, sir.
Right in here, just sign your name. Great, and on this one. Terrific.
Thanks, sir.
Greg, you want to have your wife come back? Right through the chest is fine.
Right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have a small reception in the other room.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Board of Selectmen meeting. Our next order of business, I believe we're going to the Town Administrator's Report, Sue?
That's fine. Yes, only one copy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your weekly meeting schedule is in your packet. You have EDC tomorrow evening, then Conservation Commission on Wednesday, and Planning Board Thursday. Consensus folder tonight includes the AP warrants, the town clerk's warrant for unlicensed dogs. We are now down to 183 dogs represented in 148 households. So that notice did work because it was up to 550 dogs. You have employee status reports, resignation as a library page, and also the GTV outreach. You have agreements to convey land with Tom Lamson, and event permits for 4th of July party, wedding ceremony, and guided walks of the rail trail. You have the MS5, which is the 2009 annual financial report, and a letter to the Manchester Mayor and Board of Aldermen regarding the trestle.
You have two drafts of that.
That's true. There's an original, and then there were some adjustments made as a result of input from Selectman Pierce.
Motion to accept the consensus folder.
Is there a second? You have a question before?
Could we pull out the agreement to convey land? like we
Okay,
did
we're
last
gonna pull out the agreement to convey land from the consensus folder, so we will be, if you could, just, can you re-motion that?
Yeah, minus the,
Right,
Thank you.
okay. Is there a second on Phil's motion? Yes, second. Seconded by Selectman Pierce. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, now, the agreement to convey land.
Is there a motion?
Motion to accept?
Motion to accept, is there a second?
And seconded.
Seconded by Selectman Pierce, any discussion? Not hearing any, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against? That's a 4-1. All right.
Thank you. You have assessor recommendations, intent of timber cut. Land use, well, was there, I don't have the signature folder in front of me. You have a land use change tax lien release from map 2, lot 62-4, and map 4, lot 69-1, and a timber cut on map 9, lot 43-8.
Motion to accept the assessor's recommendations on those 3 lots?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Devanza, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. You have, sorry this arrived late, so it didn't make it to your packets. This is a bid award recommendation for the roofing at the police department, the re-roofing. There were 4 bidders. We opened these last week, Chief? 2 weeks ago. And this is the chief's spreadsheet, and he is recommending the low bidder, because it's the low bidder, but also because it met all the specifications that were in the RFP. And that would be Therian Roofing at $31,820. For the record, the other 3 bidders were Desjardins at $32,950, Skyline for $34,980, and Calcor for $38,983.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's a motion to proceed with the recommendation, which is Therian, which is the low bidder. Also meets all the qualifications as prescribed in the RFP. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Fournier. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you. Just as an FYI, as you've probably noticed on your monthly revenue reports, that under interest on investments, the bank fees are outweighing the interest these days. So our finance director has been working with the bank and has negotiated reduced monthly fees, which will save us about $800 a month. We are also re-examining the lockbox fees. Our understanding is there's about 1,200 transactions there, so as the bills come in or the payments come in and the tax collector enters it, we're going to try to get a feel for how much it would cost us to do it labor-wise, just to enter those, and maybe consider doing without lockbox at the next tax billing time. But we'll get back to you on that. Also, as an FYI, when the details regarding the requirements of the Governor and Council meeting arrived, it was clear that we could not accommodate the request for meeting space, parking space, or room setup. So we did refer them over to the school district, but the school district is undergoing a lot of repairs and construction in the schools this summer, and they could not accommodate either. I talked to Deborah Pignatelli today. She was looking for a restaurant to have it, and so I did refer her to Stonebridge because she needs
St. Anselm's is not appropriate, or?
I did recommend that. I recommended the Congregational Church,
Right.
Stark Hall, the county.
Right.
But she really wanted something in the village area. But, so
Alright.
anyway, she was gonna call Stonebridge and find out
Okay.
about the availability. I told her that the school district would be happy to accommodate during the school year, when their culinary students are there and can do the breakfast, and their choral group is available to do the music at the beginning of the meeting, but they only take those meetings out on the road in the summer, so she wasn't able to accommodate it during the school year. And that's all I had for public session.
All right. We'll move on to Selectmen's discussion, new business. First order of business would be Selectman Devanza, and this is regarding an HDC request for authorization to apply for a 2010 CLG grant and for approval for historical markers agreement form.
Okay, the CLG grant is to, purpose of that grant is to, for a complete study of the Parker Station neighborhood, similar to what we did with Grassmere last time to find what the natural boundaries are with that, and that's basically what the grant is for. So the commission did vote to go forward with it, and that's why it's here in front of the board.
Are there any match required for this, or?
Uh,
What's the amount? yeah, the amount of the grant and,
Yeah, there's not a problem, I think that there is no match to this grant.
The last time we did a district, there wasn't either.
No, it's not for a district, it's for the bounds, yeah, yeah, I don't believe that I think this is a full grant, because it's a study for the natural boundaries.
okay. Any other questions?
The amount?
Yeah, do you know the amount that you're seeking?
Is it on the in the signature?
I'm looking at, I'm reading,
Is it F?
oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at I apologize, I'm,
It's gotta be in that one.
no, I have the request, but I don't have that other.
I think it's in the signature folder, the actual grant application.
Yeah, okay, that's where it was,
It must be in the folder next to Selectmen Coordinator.
Steve, can I have the blue one? Thanks.
No, when I came in, I was looking for that folder, and I put the other papers in that other folder. I thought that was a signature folder.
I saw you were looking for it, so I kept it over here.
Yeah, I know you did that.
Here we go. These projects do not require donor matching share and are reimbursable at 100% of costs. And
Phil, the application makes reference to see attached map for the location of 20 properties. And that map needs to be compiled and attached.
For the purpose of responding to Selectman Campusano's inquiry, the grant request is for $9,980, and it is a full match grant. All right, we would need authorization and/or a motion, I should say, to authorize the application for the 2010 CLG grant. That's motion by Selectman Devanza. Is there a second to that motion? I'll second the motion. All those in favor of the motion on the table, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's 5-0.
And the second item is the marker grant. If you remember, when we did the Main Street District, along with that, we had a grant for markers, for the historical markers for the properties, which we got a grant for, and we've been working with Main Street to get properties that are inside that district to put the markers up. And we had two types of markers, one marker which was freestanding that would go on either on town property in the right-of-way, but having it in a right-of-way in front of a property really, when you go by there, it kind of, it doesn't fit the purpose. You want to have a marker and associate it with the property. So what this does, this is an agreement to let the marker be on private property where it could be attached to the building. And Main Street was waiting for us to come up with some type of an agreement, so that they could go forward with some various property owners, and we could work with them to get their permission to put the markers up on that. And that's what this agreement is for.
All right, is there a motion to proceed? Yes, question first?
When you talk about markers, what are you?
Historical markers, they're markers that we got the grant for that designate what the properties are. Some of them are gonna be, one was gonna be like a kiosk, but it's for the different properties that are in the district.
Are those because I remember when I was the rep there, we were talking about markers that would have information about the buildings
Right.
and/or maybe a photo.
Right,
And
right.
these are gonna
that's-
be on the building?
Some of them, it depends. When you go on the issue is you're on Main Street, there's so many signs. So to have signs stuck someplace in the sidewalk trying to get, this, you get signed out, and when you're looking at, there's no, you can't, it doesn't make any sense to just put a freestanding sign next to, a no parking sign or something. You try to talk about a building that's over here, so by putting them appropriately marked, working with the property owners, strategic places to locate the signs.
How many signs?
They're various, I believe there's 11 or 12 of them for that district that we had gotten the grant for. I'm not exactly
I'm
sure of the
not
number,
holding you to a
because
number, I'm just
we've
trying
been
to get
working on some other
concept.
signs, like we've been working on one for the Ice House, the development of the signs. And there's, you basically have one type of sign that's, property specific, and another one which is like a kiosk, or, you know, it's like for an area, so it's not a property specific, so there's different types of signs.
It doesn't look like this agreement incorporates the recommendations from Attorney Drescher.
No, I don't think this one, I think that's what it was, but it will. I think what you have in front of you is what was forwarded to Drescher, and that's what the comments are on. But the final version will incorporate his comments.
Any other questions? Need a motion on this one.
Motion to go forward with the, property owner, with the, agreements.
Okay, we have a motion.
As modified?
Right, as modified.
As
Well,
modified. Is there a second?
Recommended by, Attorney Drescher.
Is there a second? Seconded by Selectman Campusano. Any questions or comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
5-0. All right. You'll recall that we've had a couple of public hearings on the proposed ordinance for a yield sign right-of-way on Chattel and Cove at Lynchville Park Road. We have heard, there's been, like I said, 2 public hearings. There has really, I don't think there's been any public who spoke either for or against. This came out of a recommendation from Highway Safety, where it was recommended. So at this time, unless hearing any objections from the board, we will proceed with a vote on this ordinance, and I would need a motion.
Make a motion to approve the ordinance?
We have a motion to approve the ordinance as written, which is
Are we doing both at one time or separate?
I'm gonna, I'll do them separately in
Okay.
case there might be any objections to one. Selectman Fournier wishes to recuse himself. Do I have a second on that motion to, this is for Chattel first,
Second on Chattel
okay?
yield sign.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. Next would be the proposed yield sign right-of-way on Cove and Lynchville.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
And second.
Seconded by Selectman Pierce. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That is 4-0. All right, Selectman Forney, you're back in the game again.
New business?
New business. No, I'm gonna go, I'll tell you what, is there any
I
new
do have-
business that you'd like to?
I have a couple small pieces of
Sure.
new business if I could.
Yeah.
I did speak with Chief regarding the traffic on Mass Road, and I'm sure most of you are aware that some of the business there are concerned about their, how the traffic
Right, and
moves one way.
just so you know, I spoke with Sue also after speaking with one of the business owners this afternoon, and I know, I'm not sure if she's had any conversations with the chief. This is also, I wanna clarify a couple of things. One, this is not a Board of Selectmen project. This is a sewer commission project, of which the sewer commission, I guess, seeks the assistance of the town for both traffic control. They solicit, or they contract with our DPW, who perform certain functions as well. So, in many respects, we have to, first have discussions with the sewer commission, but I know that Sue's aware of it, as I spoke to her today, and obviously now we know the police chief, but if you wanna kinda go over some of that.
Okay, at this point, we just had an initial conversation with the chief, and we, speaking regarding the concerns of the, business people down there. And he will be looking into if there are options available and what we can do to help in the way the traffic's flowing north and south during the morning and the afternoons. Second piece I had is, and I'm it's more of a question than anything else, is that on the properties that the town has taken, such, when I say taken, meaning where there was and in particular up by the Uncanonic Pond, there's the trailer, the trolley car house, and then there was the other camp. And I went and looked at those the other day. In fact, and there's another one I know that's actually, the house has actually fallen over into a hole, and I think we own that property also. What do we do historically with these? Do we wait? I mean, at this point, there's gotta be an issue where eventually we say we gotta take it away.
I've looked at those too,
Okay.
when it was first brought to the board.
And I think the decision of the board was to allow the trolley museum to, take the
Take
parts
what
they
they
needed
wanted.
from the trolley, and they have been working on that. I'll check with Dave
Okay.
Roberge if they're done doing that, because then the next step would be to, contact the department heads to see the best way to dispose of those two. One on Forest and Incline, and the other one's Ore and Incline.
Okay, and I think there's a third one off of Water Road. There's one, I believe,
Oh, the town doesn't own that one.
the town doesn't own that one?
No.
Okay, so let me ask the next question then, because I mean.
Mark is working with the owner
Oh,
on
Mark
that
is working
because
with the
of
owner, okay,
It's
so.
a public safety issue.
And as far as the trolley one, because I did speak with some of the people up in that area, how long are we giving them to remove stuff from that?
They just started this summer, and they may be done. I just gotta
Oh, okay,
get an
because I
update
went and
from
looked
Dave.
at it, I didn't know if there was actually anything for the taking, to tell you
Oh,
the truth.
yeah.
That was pretty sad looking.
Actually, it was the hardware, and they said it's
Really?
very
Okay.
expensive to reproduce that hardware, so they were,
All right, good,
The
making
hinges.
okay,
Latches.
all right, maybe when I looked
And
at it, they
the,
might have been gone then, because it just didn't look like. much left.
sliders
All
on the
right,
windows.
And,
okay.
I guess while we're on that subject, Sue, the property, not the property that the old trolley is sitting on, the one where there's a small,
The camp?
camp,
Mm-hmm.
it still has a line from a telephone pole to a meter.
Yeah, it's de-energized then.
Yes, but is PSNH responsible for disconnecting the line from the telephone pole? There's
No,
no,
they just have to de-energize it, the building. Whenever we take a property, we contact public service to de-energize that building.
I'm missing something, because the line is still from the telephone pole to a meter connection. There's no meter there. But the line needs to be removed. I suspect the line is energized.
I'm gonna, we'll move on,
Yep.
and, I
Look
trust that
into-
you will,
look
you
into
can, have a conversation with Sue, and trust that we'll move ahead with department head discussions with regard to disposal of that,
Thank you.
property. Thank you. And my cell phone is ringing. Okay, next is any other new business anyone would like to bring up? Nick, you have anything? Steve, anything else? You good?
I'm good.
Bill, anything? Dave? Okay, we'll go into old business. We have two items of old business. One is the library parking lot, and that was a clarification, the number of gravel parking spaces requested, and I had spoken with Sue about this. I think there was some, confusion with Carl, and if I could recap as to, I think, what the expectation was. The expectation is that we would create a sort of a temporary lot, that would be kind of simple. It would just be anywhere from 8 to 12 parking spaces, not a big deal, and I think there might have been some confusion with Carl that we wanted something more than that. Carl also expressed in a email exchange with myself that, he knows that there's a lot of pressure on him this summer to do the roundabout and all these different projects that are going on, and wanted to make sure that, those got his, full attention. The board had two, I guess, directives or two discussions on it, and I thought that, I wanna make sure that we're all on the same page here, that this was gonna be a low-cost, quick fix, wasn't gonna be anything permanent, with the hopes of, since the fact that we bought this property, the community bought the property for, I don't know how much, $230,000 or $40,000, whatever it was, that we would at least be able to get some use out of it during the nice weather months, because we can't use it in the winter. And I'm just giving you my opinion, I wanna give the board my opinion, that, it was my understanding that we would proceed with a low-cost, quick thing, where I thought it would be like a 1 or 2 day project, so that we could use it, up until, say, October or something. If we wait until the end of the construction season, now it's just another, 3 or 4 months that we wouldn't get to use it. So that we have to balance with the other priorities that we have with DPW, namely doing all of our other maintenance. We have a lot of projects, albeit many are being done by contractors. There is quite a lot of activity going on the DPW end. So I do not have any authority, other than being the chair to have conversations with the department head, but I don't, we did have two, I thought they were pretty clear directives, but, that's kind of where we stand. So, Carl is meeting with Mike Lawler and Diane Hathaway, I believe this Wednesday, to try to, stake out or say, hey, here's what we wanna do. Okay, if you wanna. Yeah, I just wanted to try to lay out everything that I was aware of. And, I'm not an engineer, it was, in my mind, I was just thinking, we're gonna remove dirt, we're gonna put some gravel down, obviously it has to be graded, et cetera, but it wasn't gonna be anything special. And I thought it'd be a day or two with the Bobcat and a couple of, 3 or 4 dump trucks full of gravel, and we'd kinda be compacted, we'd be kinda done. That was what I was envisioning. I'm not sure if everybody else envisioned the same thing.
I didn't even envision 3 or 4 loads, I thought
Okay.
maybe 1 or
One,
2
okay,
most.
whatever, right, yeah.
Okay,
I don't know
but
how
mean-
much sand loam they would take off, so, yes, Nick.
Well, I was gonna suggest we have the drawing for the parking lot location, that they're, for their permanent parking lot. If we follow this and just start at the back, we stay right along that road, we can go up, do 12 parking spaces, and it stays within the footprint of where the existing parking lot will go.
So you wouldn't have any
Versus-
redundancy, right?
Right, versus this grass area here, I know even after the parking lot is completed, they'd like to keep that area grass for summer programs until that, when and if there's ever an expansion. So it wouldn't pay to put a parking lot here and then have to take the gravel up and grow
And then
grass
grow
again.
grass again.
So it may be worthwhile just staying within the footprint of,
And what would be the access to that?
through that existing drive.
Okay, so that would go
Which
all the way.
is right here, right.
Circular.
No, I just hope that the parking lot that's shown on there doesn't require trees
No,
to
you
be
know,
removed.
No,
what
it's,
he's saying is
if
you
we
wouldn't do the whole
stay
thing.
and make,
You'd only
we don't
do-
take the whole thing, it's outside the treed area,
That's all.
as it shows on the map, the existing
Oh,
trees.
okay, well, it's just that I have never compared that plan to the actual site. So if there's some area that needs some extensive site work, that I don't want Public Works
Correct.
spending
Right.
more than 2 days on this project.
Correct.
Okay, just as long as we're on the same
I
page.
think that we're all on the same page there, that it was a 1 or 2 day deal, nothing extensive, we're not putting in drainage or culverts, or anything.
I mean, if we
anything
use
like that.
gravel, not nip pack, but just
Right.
plain gravel, you're gonna have the same permeability of that as the grass that exists there, so.
Well, hopefully if there's some loam in there, that they might be able to take the loam and put it on
Would
the
the
side.
board like me to participate in that Wednesday discussion?
If you are free, I have no problem, just contact Mike Waller, I'll give you his phone number. And, I didn't wanna make a mountain out of a molehill. That was
I
that-
understand
Yeah.
that's the existing, gravel path, and to,
Start from the left side and just work out until you
Right,
hit.
knowing that you're not gonna do this whole thing, you're only gonna do, half that.
And
Yes, Steve.
just a question, while you're having that discussion, I realize we're talking a sand parking lot, and you're talking utilization for the summer. I've always looked at the parking at the library, its biggest demand is when it's winter, and I'm not sure what steps would be needed, not to come to a full parking lot, but make it usable for winter. Can we have at least a discussion, or find out what would it would take, just so we could look at
Well,
that?
there's a couple of things, there's lighting, which is a big issue, there's the removal of any type of, snow, I mean, I'm looking at it as,
I understand what you're looking, I'm just saying,
Right.
I would just wanna know what that other piece would be, if
You're also
it might
looking
be
at a
some.
liability issue
Right.
too, so.
But I'm just thinking what we would have to do for that next consideration, because I would expect that this might be,
I think drainage would be one of the big
because
considerations.
I have a feeling this
out
might
there.
be longer than we think, that it'll be used in this
now, I
capacity.
think that what the board has to recognize is that, we talked about it, this being a 1 or 2 day deal, that it would not require extensive engineering or anything like that. Recognizing, Carl obviously has pride in the work that his department does, and he doesn't wanna do anything half-baked, and then have somebody, critique it later, saying, I can't believe DPW did this. And I just think that, that's where our job is, to try to give, we're doing something, to try to expedite this, to use it, and I think we have to, give, a little bit of leeway in terms of, I don't think we're expecting a perfect parking lot here, we just want something that's serviceable and usable for, 6 to 8 months out of the year. Recognizing the fact that there may be a couple of things that get put on, that get delayed a couple of days, like shouldering roads, or maybe painting a crosswalk or something, because they may have been scheduled in, but because we wanna do this to take advantage of use during the summer, something may get, knocked off 2 or 3 days delayed, I should say.
Just a question, because that just reminded me, we had a conversation about getting a project matrix. Is that gonna happen? Did we not
I will,
do that?
you know,
I mean, we're almost in
you know what
July
we'll
now.
do this, can you just write that down, and we're gonna come back,
Okay.
we'll come back to
I
that.
do have a point to that project matrix also.
Okay. as I think it'll tie into number 2, I also then had a conversation with Sue on a similar topic, and that was the website update. On June 1, we were told that we thought that it would be kind of good to go on June 7. Conversations with Sue, there was some vendor delays, and I guess the concern here is that whether it be EDC, obviously, and the Goffstown Industrial Corp were pushing this thing to try to get us to update our website, and we've been talking this thing up pretty good, and we need to, I guess, get the ball rolling here. And I'm not sure what the delays are with the vendor, but the vendor also told us that he would need a month to get the thing up and running from the time he got his payment, and it's just been in my opinion, again, it's not the opinion of the board, but in my opinion, the speed in which we're getting some of these services delivered is just not acceptable, and we're paying this vendor, I think it's upwards of $10,000 to have the website done, and I think the expectation is that it should have been done like 3 weeks ago. Now, so we have an update on this since I spoke to you, I think, Thursday or Friday on it, and I'm not sure where we stand on it now.
Yes, you have Neil's memo, which
Right.
is the most up-to-date.
Okay.
So, there were 4 parts to this project: the public access to the assessors database, public access to town GIS, a dedicated prominent economic development page, and migration to a modern web, design web format. And we had chose Joomla for that. So, steps 1 to 3 are complete, and the web GIS will be improved over time, but is available, offering wealth of information to the public from the comfort of their home or offices. The economic development site was split off from the planning and zoning office sites and includes a site list of potential development properties. The conversion to a new design format using a Joomla template is a work in progress. This project has several identifiable components as well. 1 is site architecture. The base template has been installed. 2 is data migration. 60% of the existing website data has been migrated to the new format by a vendor. 3 is a new content management system, which will allow departments to update content on their own pages, and he will be training our IT people on that, so that's yet to be done. It also will have an email sign-up for improved communications with the public and a directory component to improve our business listing. So, he's got 40% more to migrate.
What does that mean in
Current
time?
website.
What does that mean in time? A lot of words there, but
Yeah,
someone
and
tells me 30 days, I anticipate 30 days. And
I don't have an ETA, and there's no penalty for the vendor not performing within his self-imposed time limit that he gave us. So the contract doesn't have anything like that in it.
All right.
just,
I'll jump on the sword here. I know everybody, works hard, and but this is this type of stuff that I just think is unacceptable. There's gotta be deadlines. We are held to deadlines. We are held to grant application deadlines, which a lot of times we get things last minute, and I think this thing has been going on so long. We've been talking about this website for it's just absurd, in my opinion, that there's nothing in the memo that talks about a deadline. I mean, I know that, I don't know about anybody else here, but I want this thing done,
And we've been talking about it a lot longer than he's had it, recognizing, and we asked him, how long will it take you? And he said 4 weeks, and that's what he put in his proposal, 4 weeks.
So let's move on to another vendor.
You've already paid him half the cost. That
So
was
we'll
part of
then
the
file
contract.
a lawsuit against them to get our money back or something. I mean, this is craziness. I mean, I don't know, I would never, if the shoe was on the other foot, this is just incredible that we're allowing this to happen. And
Do you want to delay payment of the other half for the same time period that he was delayed in getting it?
here's what kind of gets me is that, the little that I do know about websites, but I've seen like kids do this, and it's the same thing. I mean, I've seen high school students do websites and develop it for less money, and they do it for fun, and they can all update it. And here we are, we're spending $10,000, and it's taken like a year.
No, 5,000.
Okay, I'm just saying, so I stand corrected, I just,
What's the percentage of this that's accomplished, of the entire job, what's the percentage?
60% maybe? Well, maybe a little bit more if you
more than
factor in the
60.
GIS, which took forever.
60% of 4, but other 3 things are done.
Right.
And I have no idea what the breakout, just because there's 4 items doesn't mean that, the first 3 are 75%.
No,
So-
his, and I wanna clarify, the 5,000 is just this piece of it, okay? There was additional charge for the GIS and the, assessing database, but his part of this particular vendor that's doing this part was
So this is what
5,000.
the 4 weeks was for, and he's 60% done of the 4 weeks?
Right.
Step 4.
And how much time has gone by? When
Well,
when
we-
did he tell us 4 weeks?
Oh, it's
A
on
month
our
ago.
calendar over there.
June 1.
Then it was a delayed a week, cause by the time he got his money, he had already had a week
Right, and,
vacation
yeah,
planned.
because when, I
It's
reread the
on
minutes, I
that.
mean, on 6/1, it was gonna be next week, Neil was gonna come in, we're gonna be starting to do training, and now we're at 6/21. And again, if I was to go back into minutes before that, this thing was like slated to be done before the summer. And it's just dragging and dragging and dragging.
And Neil's in constant contact with him, to make sure it gets done, but we're at the mercy of a private vendor.
From what I just heard in the discussion, we're halfway through the 4 weeks.
Mhm.
Yes?
No, it was due June first, so we're over the 4 weeks.
due.
We are way, yeah, we are 3 weeks late.
In 1 week, we can,
No,
Right
and
after
actually,
that
we're not even
vacation.
3 weeks. And when I say that, there was a lot of delays because he said he didn't get his money yet, and there was all these other things, so, I mean,
because the clock
he
started
wouldn't, yeah,
ticking.
the
when
clock
got-
wouldn't even though that we had a signed agreement with him, he said he's not gonna start until he gets his money.
And that's what the agreement
yeah.
said, that the clock started ticking, the 4 weeks would
Right, so
start
when is the
ticking when
4
he
weeks
received
from that point,
It already was.
It's on the calendar.
It already was. June 1.
from when he got,
Yeah, June 1 was when when it should have been done. So we're 3 weeks back now. I mean, it'd be one thing, if I saw in this letter, in this memo, the completion date is July 1, we'd probably even be having this conversation. But to not even have a completion date is just, I don't know. I said my piece. Everybody else can chime in, but it's one of our goals too, by the way. Anyone else wanna weigh in, or we're just satisfied with the
well,
delays?
I think that the administration's got the message.
Now, going into, as far as dates and times and when we expect delivery of services or whatever projects we're in, I'm just gonna bring another one up, and here's the piece where, you know, and I know I've taken a lot of hits where, you know, jokes people saying, what about the calendar, et cetera, and the reason I like the calendar, it gives me an idea and reference of time, and it puts a goal when we expect these things to be done and completed. And in my short time here, it seems to have been that most of the time it's overpromised and underdelivered. And sometimes I think that's done with the best intentions, but I'd rather see an honest evaluation saying, you know what, this isn't gonna be a 4-week project, it is gonna be a 7, because one normally can say that I do run into contingencies and problems, et cetera, and I agree with Chairman Gross that part of it would be, I can understand some of those pieces, but you would expect, you would expect someone who is professional enough to create these sites that you're much closer than what the deadline's been given, and then knowing that if there has been constant contact, and I expect that Neil's saying, must be, I hope he's, giving some frustration, you know, when I say you know, or having some conversations that, hey, it's a frustrating process, that I would expect the vendor himself to be saying, hey, by the way, you know, or Neil talking and saying, hey, by the way, we have to get somewhere a completion date that's conservative, but we have to have something coming back for and what's going on. And with that being said, I'm just gonna switch to another
I'm gonna hold on.
similar situation.
You can just
I can
hold
hold
your
it
thought
though.
for 1
All
second. I agree with what Selectman Devanza just said, that administration has gotten the message. I hope you have. And I think when you go back and we talk to the director on this, that there's a conversation about, show me the emails or the letters that you have sent to this vendor. Because if there are no emails or letters to the vendor that are following up on it, then we do have an issue, because it is our job to follow up and make sure. So I will trust that you will have that discussion and just to demonstrate the, you know, the speed in which we have to start to deliver, you know, on these things, because if the shoe was on the foot, we must do it. We don't have choices. we've already seen in some of our operations where we perform dispatch and other things, if we're not staying current, we're not delivering the services to towns, or people are going elsewhere. So I think we have to hold others, you know, to that same standard. Steve?
The other one I wanted to speak up regarding a project is the Litchfield Park, Danish Park, water hookup. Part of that was the grant application. That, when they started the original piping going by, part of the conversation was in the fall, people would be actually hooking up, that the grant process be done, and there was that hopeful talk. And then it followed from there to spring. And somewhere this winter, we had not yet applied for the grant. And where we are right now is that the grant finally did get applied for and was accepted, but now, and I was speaking with Megan last week, and part of the process now is that she had to create the guidelines for the bid, and I hope I have this correct. Then after that, it has to go out to DES, and they have to look at those specifications for the bids. And then it has to come back, and then the board's gonna have to approve it going out for bid. And then it's gonna go out to bid, and that's a minimum of 3 weeks. And then it comes back and it goes to DES, and then it comes back to the board, and then people start making arrangements for the hookup. So it's gone from a project that we thought we were hooking up in the fall, then it was going to be early spring. Now we are not even close to this fall. And then the following question I gave with her was, this grant money, does it have to be expended in 2010? That I have not yet gotten the answer. If we could follow up on that, I'd appreciate it. But I'm just saying, as far as deadlines and times, and what should have been being started on a process with this grant way back in 2009 didn't start till almost spring of 2010. There was just no way it was ever going to happen in the fall or happen in the spring. And all I'm trying to say is that there has to be, and if part of the process was that it was going to take that long, then we need to be fair and honest with this. I have people calling me who have been waiting, who have water conditions, and I think some of them might have said, hey, if I knew it was gonna be another year, they might have been doing the hookup prior to this, but either way, people have to make arrangements. And the other question that comes up, like I say, I'm not sure regarding, does this grant money have to be expended in 2010?
No, this was a congressional earmark, and we had to wait for the EPA guidelines before you could even apply for it. When the EPA guidelines came
EPA, that's what it was, yeah.
then we applied for it. Then we had to wait for the EPA approval, because there's no sense in writing up bid specs, even though Megan got a head start on writing up bid specs, but she had to wait for the EPA approval and all their conditions for that approval to incorporate those, and that's what she's doing now, incorporating those into the RFP, then to send it off to EPA and DES to make sure it meets.
But my understanding of this process, when we went forward last spring, this should have been started last summer at least, regarding applying for it.
But how can you apply for it if you don't have the
release it yet.
approval
Yeah,
yet?
the earmark wasn't released yet, so
Okay.
that was I hear what you're saying.
Well, then why are we saying we're hooking up in the fall? Why are we saying there could be a hookup in the spring? Then I'm just saying that the miscommunication that's out there is incredible.
I think this was all
No, you
a
can't be telling
staggered.
people, by the way, we expect hookup in the fall, then say, oh, looks like spring. And then the last thing I'd heard was maybe June or July. Well, looking at these time dates, it's not June or July, it's going to be next summer. All I'm saying is that when someone gives me a date or a time reference, I'm looking at that reference to make decisions on.
This isn't a routine.
I got you next. You can go, Sue, and then I got.
I think what Carl explained is this is out of the ordinary. There's nothing routine about this project. The town never goes on private property to do something of this scope. So we want to make sure the taxpayers of Goffstown are protected by the town just being the fiscal agent for this, and the contracts, and they have to, EPA has to accept that procedure, that the contracts between the homeowner and whoever the successful bidder is. Carl explained this at one of the meetings.
And I'm fine with that, but why wasn't that explained up front? Why wasn't that not brought out? Why were dates projected out?
Because at that moment in time, that was the best available, based on the best available information at that moment in time. When you're in that kind of a project, things have to be very fluid, because things change.
Time out.
And
Hold on, time out. I wanna get Nick,
okay.
then I go,
Yeah, like
then
that.
you go again.
I just have a quick question. When did the betterment assessments start?
Not till it's all done.
We don't get a bill until the whole project's complete.
Okay, so they're not paying on
No.
that yet.
My recommendation is to let's update the residents down there by letter, or however means we can do that, with the most up-to-date information. Let them know what the history is, let them know that there was, now the earmark was just, we had anticipated this earmark, but it was not released, it was just released at this particular time, and here is the timetable that we're looking at. Because I think from what you're saying is that we're setting an expectation, we're setting a bar high, and we're hitting it lower. And I'm just saying,
Much lower.
and what Phil is trying to say is that, we gave our best shot at what the information we had, it now has to get recalibrated because the feds didn't release the earmark, and our time frame is not where it needs to be. Bottom line, though, is that we've got 235 people, residents, who may have one expectation when realistically that's not the case. So I think what we need to do, in my opinion, is to update them as to where we stand. You can't over-communicate in this one. And now, I'll go back to you. What you basically said doesn't sound too promising for even a fall hookup.
I'm not sure, I'd like to say, this is not
Okay.
my forte, but I would like to be, now that we've gone this far, I would like to know the date that came to us, that we were releasing for the grant, that we should be preparing the bid. And when did we start on the bid? And I will probably expect there's a large gap of time within there,
Megan started on the bid before we got approval of the grant.
okay? And when did the approval of the grant come in?
I'd have to check the time.
Okay, so I'd like to see
2
that
months ago.
time and when that went out.
I think it was only a couple of months ago.
Okay, and so my issue with that is that I understand that not all things are within our control. But also, if we're saying, hey, we don't even have this in our hands to go, why are we saying the fall? Why are we saying a date? We shouldn't even be extenuating a date, because we don't know. And that's the piece of communication that we're missing there, that one be it this project, or be it the project that we're doing on Mass Road, regarding how long is it going to take, do we anticipate delays, how the traffic's going to flow? We're not communicating those pieces out, and people are not getting the proper, so thus people can't plan and have the proper expectations, and I think we can do a much better job at that.
We is all of us, in my opinion, and you included, me included. We all have the ability to educate our constituents. We all have the ability to write a draft of a letter to the newspaper for the board to sign off on, to get into the newspaper, so it can go on the website, so we all are responsible. I do think with regard to these hookups, we should have a discussion with DPW, and what is the realistic time frame? What's the best and worst case scenarios? When do we, and then let the residents know. I think that is fair to them. I would concur that there's probably at least half dozen to a dozen folks who have not so good water, and there's no sense in drilling another well, and what steps should they take? How long is this thing gonna be? Is there a way in which they would get reimbursed? Because that's gonna be a question. Well, if I gotta lay out $5,000 to do the hookup, would you pay me back in that, I know,
And
but
we've,
that's.
yeah, we've had those questions.
Right, but
and
that's
we've
a
answered them.
question.
Yeah.
And maybe what we can also do is put something, a page, frequently asked questions for this project on our website.
Megan and I did
Right.
discuss doing that, but it seems like, there's just so many things going on right now that.
The other thing that, it goes back to what, Selectman Fournier said, is rather than we're all spinning each other's wheels, there's a couple of things I think we need to do. One, if all of us are contacting, and I think we're all guilty of it, contacting a department head for one thing or another, which you can do. If there's just one central, way that we can all kind of communicate, like I said, I don't know how we do shared drives or other things, but it'd be nice to, to go into something that's secure, where if I wanna know how a project is going, if someone, I can go on an intranet or, an internal site or a drive to see how a project is going. I don't have to even, I can give someone what the latest update is. And this way, if there is an update for Megan, or somehow we gotta communicate that to all of us, so that you're not calling, I'm not calling, you're not calling, you're going over there, all of a sudden, we're responding to 5 selectmen, a couple of department heads.
Eats into the time
Feeds
to
into
do the
their
work,
time.
yeah.
And then, let's magnify that even more, right? Because we're just a board of selectmen. The sewer commission's got a big project going on. You've got water precinct people who might be calling in for her, or for Carl. You take us, you multiply it times 6.
She's
and
got
that's
all the stuff she gotta do for Conservation
right.
Commission.
I'm just
and
saying,
all.
we've gotta be mindful of the fact that we may be occupying more of their time, so we gotta worry about the communication. So how can she do it in a way, and here's what I think we should start to be doing, is when I was on the school board, and I kinda like this, it was a superintendent's report, and I think, you know, for the bigger departments, you know, what are the big things that happened in your department this week? And for big projects, how is it going? And then if we get that email as a selectman every week, we know what's going on.
We used to have weekly reports.
Right.
Maybe a weekly progress report
Right.
on all the cases through the selectman's rep to the department.
Right. You know, or even if it's something where the selectmen then, you know, but there's gotta be something so that we're all on the, you know, kind of on, you know, on the same page. We did get away from that, we used to do that. But there is, it might, with so much activity going on right now, with all these different projects, maybe it's a temporary thing that we get back on with it, but,
I'll endorse most, everything you're saying here. I believe, I'd like to hear Carl come in and talk about project overload on our town engineer's office. And for all those things you just mentioned, a wealth of projects that are ongoing this summer and this fall, and left over from last year too with water hookups. There's
right, but there's
just too many
Right.
things contesting for a
And
few
again,
hours a day.
right, and I think we all appreciate that, but there's also some outlets, and, you know, when it comes to, correct me if I'm wrong, but on, say, the planning board side, in the past, before we had a town engineer, that would go out, right? Some of these, approval, reviews would go out to a private engineering firm, and then the developer's paying for that anyway, correct?
Right.
So I'm just saying,
Paying for Megan's time to do it too.
they're paying for Megan's time, but if it's a choice between us delaying a project for 6 months and now, because we have to face it, this is the perfect storm for us in terms of there's like 3 major projects going on that probably, in my years, I've never seen anything quite like it. And maybe it's a situation where if things can get farmed out to somebody else, a private firm, and the developer is paying for it, then I'm sure they'd be happier knowing that it got done quicker, even if they had to pay.
You'll just have less revenues than
What-
projected.
But then it's your balance between, do you want projects done, or you want stuff sitting on the shelf, you know?
What other committees does the town engineer attend besides planning board?
Conservation.
Conservation.
All of them, or just some?
I don't know, but you gotta do
Just
all the
one call?
reviews.
Yeah, 'cause I haven't,
Does she attend conservation?
Once
well,
again, maybe.
occasionally maybe, but not on a routine
regular.
basis.
Well,
She hasn't been there for hours.
It's gonna
Maybe-
depend on what's on the agenda.
Exactly.
It's agenda-driven, whether she's there, and whether she's gotten to the plans from the project and had the chance to go out and review them.
Now we have, Alex is also an engineer,
Did she go to
correct?
Red Trail?
In training,
But has an engineering degree?
yes. But that's, I'll go back to the same thing I said. Perhaps Carl needs to come in here and explain to us, the project overload and his engineer staff. And if there's any, short-term solutions to, take care of an immense amount of work that we're seeing this summer.
I think we also, they've recognized too, that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but Megan also serves in a supervisory capacity, right, on certain things? She's a project lead, or, I mean, she does things that are not just reviewing plans. I mean, she's doing a lot more than just that.
Well, she's also a technical review.
That's what I'm saying. She's a key person, yeah. So, you know, to try to, you know, wrap all this stuff up, I do think that we're gonna need, you know, going back to what you said, Nick, this is a good time, I think we do want, about these project updates, and, or is it you, Steve, who said that, as to, you know, where are we at? And, you know, it goes back to even some of the little things, like, you know, the web, whether it be the website or the library parking lot or whatever it is, because this way, when, you know, I understand where Carl's coming from when he says, well, hey, the board, you got a lot of other stuff going on the plate. If you want me to bump it out, I'll do it, but recognize that, you know, you wanted this, and this is gonna take 2 days, and, you know, I'm pressed for time, but that's a decision that we have to make, but if you knew that what you had, you know, in that pipeline, it would be a little bit
Maybe
easier.
David could answer, what are the major projects that our engineering staff are working on? The roundabout we paid for the engineering for that. The green drainage, we paid for the engineering for that. The
Well, they still have
sewer-
to do the inspections, they have to
Oh,
make sure.
I
that the
understand,
stuff
that's a
is done.
day-to-day, but I'm talking about engineering.
Well,
Besides the
that-
water,
I should have brought in then, an email that I had from the town engineer last week that explained, about 6 different projects that are major consuming her time.
We have another engineer too, correct?
Alex.
Alex.
Okay.
And, but I'll continue to come back. There's too much on the platter for town engineers, staff. And we're seeing the results of that right now with what we perceive as things running slower than we desire. And maybe Carl needs to offer us some solutions there.
If I may? I made this point previously. I think we need to start looking at our road plan in a time management versus a dollar. It was very easy when we set the road plan up to say, this is the dollar figure we need to do all these projects, but I don't think we really took into consideration the time, manpower time, because we have seen consistently every year. We had floods a couple of years, but it has been without break. The work cannot get done. I think there is more work proposed than can possibly be done. Especially in this economy, we're not gonna propose adding another engineer. I mean, so, it only leaves you with certain options.
Well, I think that's why, maybe we can schedule Carl in the next week or two, just to give us kind of an update, because, I mean, I see a lot of shouldering going on around town, I see a lot of maintenance things, I mean, it's clear, I drive around, I see it all the time. I see a lot of contractors, whether it be Delorme, the one on, the folks on, obviously, I drive by Mast Road, so there's a lot of different things that are going on. What are we doing that's being farmed out to contractors? What are we doing internally? What oversight is needed? 'Cause I think that's the big, I think that 3 major projects going on, and the oversight part is the big piece. I think that Alex is just, doing a lot of that oversight, and that's a daily oversight, making sure that we're getting what we pay for. And I think, I think the technical review of different plans, I think Megan is doing a lot of that, and meeting with contractors and doing, so, I think that's what's kind of bogging us down, but by the same token, we're not really building any roads or anything, so we're not, it's unlike, when we were doing, Snook, I think it was, we're not involved in that type of activity.
Most set will be.
Most set will be us.
Will be us.
Right. So maybe that's where some of the engineering is too.
And the widening of the, shoulder at Mass Road will be us.
Yeah. So, it's a good, I think, but all this does is it just signifies the reason why having these project, charts is so important, because when you can quickly look at it and you can say, whoa, we do have, quite a bit. And, when you do have these project charts and it tells you, oh yeah, we need 80 hours of engineering on something. Well, and this one needs 60 hours of engineering, this one needs 20, and this one needs 100. You can quickly do the math and say, that's gonna get us into next year. So it will either signify to us that maybe we are biting off more than we can chew, or 2, we're just extremely busy and maybe we can't do certain things. But I think it does go back that we definitely need timeframes on these projects. What's the budgeted allocation, when's the due date, what's the budgeted allocation of resources, contingencies, all that stuff. Anyone else want to add anything? Is that something that the board wishes to have a further conversation? I mean, we've already had the conversation, in my opinion, right, with Carl. Am I off on this one? Nick, didn't we have that? We wanted these project timelines? So, I think the marching orders here is that we need to probably, we need these project timelines, and then for us, we need to back off and, in terms of asking for updates, because if you give us the status reports, we won't need them. Anything else?
You just want a weekly status report, you don't want Carl to come in?
I think Carl should come in just to give us an
Okay.
overview and just do the first one. But is there anything else from other department heads that you want? Do you want a weekly, just 4 or 5 bullets as to what were the big things that went on in the department, yay or nay? Any benefit there? I don't wanna create work for anybody if there's no benefit. Steve, I'm not seeing any
I don't
yay or nay.
think we have to paint things with a large brush. And there is the part, yeah, I understand what goes on with Carl, that he's shuffling and moving things. I feel bad for Megan that she's overloaded with this piece. But when the information comes out and you say, you give certain dates, next thing you know, I'm receiving phone calls saying, of fall. Then I, oh, well, yeah, things went forward, it'll be in the spring. Next thing you know, hey, it'll be June, July. Hey, I'm telling them June, July, and all of a sudden I'm getting this. So these people, you meet these people, you talk with them, you call them, it's like, and it keeps moving around the calendar. And part of that is that people just need the ability to understand what's going on, have a fair assessment of what's happening. And I realize some things don't always come in on time, et cetera, but I don't see too many that come in on time or before time, so maybe maybe we're over-promising, maybe we should, we have to communicate a lot better in sounder communication.
I think DPW is unique in the fact that that's really the only department that has ongoing
Major
projects
projects.
like that. Police and fire, typically when an issue comes up, they let their
Rep,
their
okay.
liaison know about it, and it's business as usual unless there's an issue or something comes up. They're not dealing with projects.
Just wanna make sure we're being as efficient as we can. I mean, and if there's any good ideas out there, let's get them out on the table. Under old business, Sue, we got an email from, I don't know, Lori Treamer, Wayne Treamer, I don't know who it was, regarding Parsons Drive,
Yes,
and,
that's still in the hands of Attorney Drescher to write
Right.
the resolution, to give to their attorney so he can get them all to sign off, so that we can get the betterment assessments out.
okay, so this is,
So
what's the ETA
I
on
know,
this one?
it's like, Attorney Drescher, his timeline is to make sure he meets all the litigation cases first and foremost. He's an excellent attorney, but maybe for things like this, maybe we need a different attorney because he just
All right.
doesn't have the time to deal with this. I mean, he has promised me he will get that
Right.
done.
This reminds, we've got a lot on the to-do list. And then when the to-do list gets so big and then something gets, oh, I forgot to take it from one to-do list and put it on the other to-do list. And I think it's situations like this where, I don't know about you, but I just wanna go, done, and it seems like we continually, and then it just takes more time and administratively it costs us money. Can we find out where Drescher is on this one? And if Drescher is too busy, then let's farm it out to somebody else who can do it. I mean, we're gonna pay a legal bill no matter if he does it or somebody else does. And I
Only
think,
problem is you're gonna send it out to somebody else by
who
the
doesn't
time
know
that
the
person-
issue.
By the
I know.
time they get up to speed, you
Right.
could've had Drescher.
But I
do it.
guess-
Well, usually he subs out the real estate
Right.
type of work, which I would
Right.
categorize as almost, quasi real estate.
Right.
He usually, subs that out to Attorney Tom Quinn, who gets back to us pretty quickly, cause that's all he does.
All right.
So I can talk to him about that.
If you can, I mean, obviously, we're in the same boat here. I mean, we're expecting timeliness for legal services, and I mean, I think the most of Attorney Drescher, he's a great attorney, but if he's busy, we still gotta meet our timeframes and those of our residents, and then we need to farm it out. So if we can get an update on that one next week, and just let us know where Drescher stands with it, but I think we need to resolve this thing, to me, this is a 30-day resolution now. I mean, this thing's been going on for how long?
Mhm.
Like a year and 2 years, I mean, actually 4 years if we wanna go back, but, all right, let's move ahead. One more last chance on any old or new business? All right. Committee reports, Sewer Commission.
Sewer Commission met on the 8th of June. There was a certificate of occupancy for the recent construction of the medical building on Tatro Drive. That's been issued. The medical center is renting the second floor, and they anticipate moving in and opening up in July. There's item 2, Viking Orchards Residential Development, which is at the top of Worthley Hill Road. They're gonna begin construction on 6 lots which face the road, or maybe it's 4 lots on road in my notes. And this includes connecting those lots to the existing sewer line. The Sewer Commission presented information on a capital improvements program committee back in early June, the first part of June. And they'll continue updating the CIP as the summer goes on, especially in connection with the Mass Road Sewer Project repayment numbers. there's also sewer payments to City of Manchester. Item 4 on that commission session, they did discuss the Mass Road Sewer project, which we all know is officially underway. Item 5 was Abington Square Townhomes, and at the 500 block of Mass Road, they recently paid an accessibility fee, and at my last report, there's a pump station test that has to be done before certificate of occupancy can be issued. And then item 6, they are putting the final touches on a draft plan which addresses sewer capacity management operations. And this will be, this plan is to be submitted to the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. Finally, the second quarter of 2010 sewer bills were mailed a week ago, 2 weeks ago now, to 2,094 customers. Those were the items discussed on 8 June.
All right, thank you, Selectman Pierce. Planning Board.
Planning board met. One of the items that we, well, there were several items that we addressed. One of them was the lot line adjustment for the Barnard property, which went through with the conditions as recommended by the planner, which we all knew, no surprises on that. Then there was a application for excavation on 2 lots. One's on Norman Road and off Norman Road, and the other one is off of Wallace Road, which were the 2 parcels that were on the warrant last year. You know, when the planning board had told them to come back and apply for as an excavation, because that's what they wanted to do. So they came back, and I was trying to get some information on that and as to how much material they were looking to remove. The material was, the way it was expressed was 6 to 8 feet that they were looking to take off, and my question was, you know, I understand 6 to 8 feet, but I'm trying to compute that into cubic yards, so I need to know how many, I need to kind of relate that into dump trucks to kind of find, when we talked about a regional impact. Planning board did not seem to think that there was any merit, I guess, in my question. What came out of that was, chairman of the planning board came up with the calculation and said it was approximately 140,000 cubic yards. Now, the board accepted the application with some waivers and found that it had no regional impact. I guess my concern with that was, I did a little bit of math, and my concern was...
Can you do that? Can you excavate that much without getting like a variance or something? Don't you have to get...
Well, that's a whole nother issue, because I'm not sure, I didn't even get to that point.
Okay.
What I was trying to get to the point was, how many trucks of material is this gonna be? Because they wanted waivers for drainage waivers, okay? So now, I guess to me, if you're gonna take 6 to 8 feet, and you're gonna go and you're gonna take it by, let's say, 100 by 100, you know what I'm saying? You can kind of define and figure out, like when we look at the site plan for the library, you know, how many parking spaces.
Yeah.
So now, I'm coming up with this, and I said it to the planning board, I said, I wanna know how many 10-wheelers are gonna be coming off the site. Okay, apparently the planning board was not interested in that, but I did my calculations where a 10-wheel dump truck is 16 yards. Now, if you divide 16 cubic yards into 140,000 cubic yards, my math comes out to 8,750  10-wheelers.
You're right.
Okay? Now, if you do dump trailers, they average 25 to 28, depending on a particular model of trailer that it has. And if you calculate it at 28 cubic yards, I come up with 5,000 18-wheel dump trucks. Now, the site that's off of Wallace Road, next to the high school, okay, my understanding is the access for that road, my recollection was Wallace Road.
Is there a weight limit?
No, wait, Wallace Road in Goffstown is posted for no-through trucking,
Okay.
which does not mean that if it's generated, the truck is generated in Goffstown, that you can't use Wallace Road, and it does not mean that if you're going to a destination off of Wallace Road, you can use Wallace Road, because Filto's Pit can be accessed by 18-wheel dump trucks using Wallace Road. Now, if we're gonna have a roundabout being constructed, well, first of all, it was stated that they wanna do this, get this done, this excavation done, and place this back on the warrant.
Who's,
The property owner.
who?
Um,
Warrant for who?
on the, it didn't say which, town or school, it just said
Well, doesn't,
on the town ballot.
I,
The property owner intends to place it on the ballot,
oh, it's a petition,
I assume.
okay.
Okay, that level of detail wasn't even, I mean, actually, that's immaterial as to whether or not it meets the zoning requirements. But my concern, okay, is that this amount of dump trucks, with this material coming off, if, I assume they're gonna be looking to take this off the site by March. You can't do this in the winter when the ground is frozen, so you probably have a 2-month period where you wouldn't be doing the excavation, I would assume. If it takes a month to get through the approval process, assume a month for them to go through, or 6 weeks, you're talking sometime in the summer that you're gonna be doing your excavation. We got a roundabout going in on the corner of Mast Road. You got this volume of trucks going through there. It would just seem normal then for the trucks to go the other way to 101, depending on where they're going. And now, if you're coming off of Norman Road, at that point in time, in the summertime, I think we have a sewer project that's gonna have Mast Road dug up down there by the fields and the villa, I believe. We have a sewer improvement project.
Don't know.
Do we have any work down there?
Don't know of one.
What does the planning board have to, do they have any authority to deal with the timeline of a project? That's what
Well,
you're getting at.
No, whether it has a regional
Regional
impact.
Yes,
So if all these trucks are gonna be going through Bedford, it's a regional impact.
yes, it would be. That's 10 trucks a day for 2 years. Saturdays and Sundays.
Hold on, I'm gonna have, Selectman Campus on.
Sue, doesn't the Board of Selectmen issue a gravel permit in order to?
Excavation permit, I think, is a
Excavation?
planning board
Yes,
process.
planning board.
Conditional use permit is required.
Don't we sign off?
Well, assessing does the actual tax. Are you talking about the excavation tax?
No, I thought there was something where the Board of Selectmen.
And I thought that, there was also some, I thought zoning had to get involved on some of that.
Could look it up, but we have no internet.
You don't?
It's been cut off.
Probably
We-
the timer went off.
Neil said that we were saying bad things about him.
Anyway, I'm just trying to get through my report. I'm just trying to report what happened.
Okay,
Okay,
has there
so-
been any decisions, can we effectuate any, input into this process?
Outside
Other than
his
you.
selectman's rep on the planning board.
No, other than, sometimes it's a letter to the planning board chairman to be read into the minutes that we have some serious concerns, which I think speaks not just one voice, but it speaks 5. Do you think that might help?
I honestly, I don't know. I don't know, it's back up, on the agenda for this Thursday.
This coming Thursday? Well, I think first and foremost, I think we need to do a little bit of legwork in terms of what Nick was mentioning, is that, you know, are we part of this process at all? Is the zoning board part of the process at all? Is it a regional impact? And I don't,
Our, table of uses say that, it's not allowed in residential district.
an excavation pit.
It is allowed in an agricultural with a special exception from the ZBA.
So where are they planning on excavating? And isn't that lot split zoned or something?
Yeah, well, there's 2 different lots, one's
Right.
in the residential and one's in agricultural.
Okay, so the one in residential would not even be allowed, unless you have, unless you
But
get a
it
variance.
has, historically, we have had one that was allowed, because it was a grandfathered use, the Surratt one on the back road.
Okay,
and it was an expansion of a grandfather.
Okay,
Yeah, so that doesn't.
but that doesn't,
Right.
that doesn't matter on this one, so that's
Right.
one issue, and then the other one you said was,
And so on that one,
Um,
we made him go to ZBA, or the,
Okay. but I think these are some of the things that we would need to do a little research and then give that information to Phil, so that he could at least convey it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, I'm gonna be sitting there, and this plan has been accepted, the board voted, there were two voted against, the regional impact were myself and Barbara Griffin. You're at that point, and as far as the board is probably concerned, that's an issue that, they already dealt with. I guess, I mean, for me to bring it up with, I'm obviously on the minority, that seemed to, 'cause I stated it's right in the minutes, that I couldn't make an, informed decision, not knowing how many trucks are coming out of there.
and their engineer did say he'd get that information for you.
Yeah.
So there will be new information at your next meeting?
Well, yeah, but, I mean, the board may, they've already.
So they voted without even knowing how many vehicles would be coming off that?
Well, I think the other option also is to let the community who might be impacted know, and maybe they would have a representative that would come in to say, this is a
I don't know
regional
if that's
impact.
up to us to do. Anyway,
How does the board wish to proceed on this one? Just let it go? Or do we wanna send a letter to the planning board to ask them to reconsider? Due to the fact that we really don't know if it is a regional impact or not, there's been no calculation, and, I don't have a problem with a vote after you determine how many truckloads are coming off this thing, or if all the i's and all the, have been dotted and the t's have been crossed, I don't have any problem with an up or down vote, but it appears to me that there's a lot of open-ended questions here, and seemed like it was a quick decision. That's just my opinion. But you have the issue with the regional impact, you have whether or not you can even excavate in a residential, which don't they care about?
like I say, I don't know, I haven't seen.
Was
the
that a
plan.
zoning issue?
My understanding, though, as town administrator mentioned, I remember when, Surratt, he had to go to ZBA.
Do you want us to send a letter? I can do a motion, and we'll send a letter to asking them to reconsider from the board, or you can just do it on your own.
Consensus of the board?
I know, I mean, I'm just using the numbers that, were.
They need
No.
to reconsider the regional impact.
Correct. And whether or not excavation,
Well,
the
maybe-
three issues that are there.
Maybe not asking to reconsider the impact, but just to, let them know perhaps some of the projects that are going on, and, that there's a concern of the volume of trucks. I'm.
Help me here.
But you need to focus in on a decision they're making,
Right.
not just express a concern.
Right.
That's where you're driving to, Phil.
I think the planner will probably bring up the zoning issue and the need for, ZBA action based upon,
Okay.
he's new, he didn't know about Surratt and what he had to go through, so he will probably bring that up. But if it's a regional impact, the decision's made, and so what would be a basis for reconsideration of that decision?
Well, I think the mere fact that they didn't even
The new
Quantif-
information?
yeah, I mean, it's new information, and if you didn't quantify how many truckloads are coming off of a site, where do you think these trucks are gonna go? I mean,
Just a basic question. This application was for a graveling operation
Excavation.
and excavation. And in either of those two zones, at a minimum, you need a special exception and/or a variance.
A special exception, yeah.
I'm saying if it's in, and I think we talked about this at the all boards meeting, why would an application like that even get through to the planning board before they have the,
Because the planning board told him to come back, he came in with
They told
originally
him-
a site plan, told him to come back with an excavation, for an excavation
Right,
permit.
but and that's why I brought that up at the meeting, and, Lowell, agreed and Tim agreed that we told him to come back as an excavation permit, you know, for, excavation application, which is, you know, my understanding is, this is not how I perceive an excavation,
Well,
request, application to be going forward at the planning.
The other thing that is a little bit peculiar, and I don't want the planning board to misconstrue the fact that this board has had no discussions about a purchase and sale agreement with the landowner. We haven't had discussions with that person in like well over a year. There's no, and right now, under these economic conditions, I don't see us doing that. So if there's some, you know, posturing going on as to, oh yeah, we're gonna excavate and then we're gonna develop this thing into something for town use, when we haven't even had any discussions like that. Is that being implied?
Well,
Because a petition and warrant article, anybody could do
it depends on
that.
how you interpret number one on the, and I know I don't have my planning board of material with me, but on the list of items, okay, about the application, the number one list on there referred to that this parcel, or parcels were on the ballot,
Right.
For proposed ball field. I don't
Right,
know
right,
exactly what the terminology was, but it was rejected by the voters, and that the applicant is here to go forward with the excavation and develop, again, I'm not saying, but to develop the fields and with the intent of placing it on the ballot. That's all it says.
Okay.
Just in response to Selectman Capasano's question, I do have the internet. But, 155E,
She didn't say anything bad, so
colon
she's.
1. The regulator of local excavation, or regulation excavations, is the planning board of a city or town, or if at a town's annual meeting, a special meeting duly warned for the purpose, so provides the selectmen of the town or the board of adjustment. But it's the planning board first, so they're the regulators of it. I think, what you were referring to was the excavation tax that's handled by assessing, and you are the assessors of the town, so you handled that portion of it.
All right. Hit that one pretty good, I guess. Anything else on the planning board side?
There was another lot line adjustment approved for Normando, and I think there was one other thing. Can't remember what it was.
You got ours.
Huh?
You already talked about the Barnard one.
The Barnard was the third, I thought.
Yeah.
The excavation was the second, Normando lot line adjustment was the fourth, and I thought there was another issue.
Can you get back to the agenda on the website calendar?
Anyway, I don't wanna hold meeting.
All right. We can come back to that. All boards meeting, was held last week. Sue sent a document around, to a chance to kind of read it, try to capture what was stated. Any questions or concerns with that document?
Yes.
Fire away.
There was a comment made that, every residential building costs, is negative, and if that was the case, the town would have been bankrupt a long time ago. So we had a presentation by the assessor, Scott Bartlett, about a year ago regarding that, and perhaps we need to update that, and, as part of our, recap at the end of the meeting about getting information out to, you know, from this, that perhaps that recap that we get, update we get from Scott, a summary of that perhaps should go out to everybody that was present at the board's meeting.
Okay.
Because the last thing I wanna know is I guarantee that everybody walked away from that meeting believing that.
Anything else?
Should be done.
And, you know,
If
if it
there was
was
no-
true, the town would have
There
been
should-
bankrupt.
Should have been a counter argument to that comment, and there wasn't one at the overall, at the all boards.
I think, you know, the difficulty with those meetings is we had like 30 people around the table, and, if we exchanged and went tit for tat with things that people
We'd
agreed or
be there
didn't
all
agree, that
night.
we'd
Be
be
there
there all
till
night,
3
and
o'clock
it
in the
wouldn't have been
morning.
productive, and I think, so I think it's a slippery slope when we go down and we kinda, you know, correct people or things of that nature, but I agree that you know, the comment was made, our assessor did take a look at that, and certainly that was not the case, and I think to paint that broad brush is inaccurate, and I think Scott, in his report, demonstrated that, and, it doesn't hurt to send an email out or, to let folks know. While we're on the issue of trying to, you know, things about notices, you know, we all read the paper, and one of the things I wanted to clarify with regard to public notices is that there is a cost to put all of our public notices in the Goffstown News. I don't know how many people even read the Goffstown News, to be honest with you. A lot of people read online publications, a lot of people go to our website. There are, you know, and, you know, for us to put every single thing in a newspaper, every single thing is costly. I mean, by statute, we have to put things in paper, which we do.
Yeah, public hearings.
Public hearings, et cetera.
Acceptance of grants.
Right,
and
right.
Donations over certain.
But not every single meeting, and, you know, we have to be, you know, judicious there, because I don't know what the rate is, but it's not cheap, you know.
And we did compare costs, and the Goffstown News is aware of this, because I've talked to them before. We took the same ad for a ZBA notice and compared the cost in the Goffstown News as opposed to the cost in Union Leader. And this particular one was like 3 times the cost to appear. And it's only because the type size is different, the font is different. It takes up more room in the Goffstown News than it does in the Union Leader. And so staff go with the least costly way of meeting the legal requirement.
And you also have to be concerned about the timeliness of
That happens.
inserting an article where you have the ability of getting in 5 days or 6 days a week, as opposed to once a week.
Right. And the other consideration is when we go out for RFPs or bids, we want to reach the widest circulation possible.
Statewide
of
newspaper.
vendors, exactly. So that's why we go with the Union Leader for that also, besides the cost.
Yes.
And I agree with you, I don't think we can possibly put everything out, but I think that suggestion, when we do have an item that we may think is
More
controversial
controversial.
or is gonna bring some public attention to it, putting something in to the newspaper wouldn't hurt, because it's just that added venue that we have to get the word out, to increase that communication, which we're advocating. You know, do we do it every time? No, we shouldn't, it's too expensive, but I think we have a good handle sometimes, we know when things are gonna generate controversy.
Yeah,
or when
and I think it also shows that we're not perfect either, so, I mean, sometimes we do things good, and sometimes we make a boo-boo here and there, and that's, you gotta move on. So the all boards meeting, I think, you know, I think Sue's recap was very good, and, you know, one of the things that, you know, tying back with what you said, you know, one of the things that kinda got me is, I don't know if this board envisions buying any land this year, but, you know, some of these other boards, what?
His eyes opened up when you said.
Acres and acres.
But, you know, is that something that we need to, because we said that we were gonna be the leaders, you know, that we'll take charge of some of this stuff, we'll lead the way. And, you know, I heard, I think, at least one group in one of our commissions or committees said, yeah, we're gonna keep, I think it was open space, we're gonna keep looking and we may come back, and I think, in fairness, there has to be some sort of dialogue there as to, okay, or if you're gonna do this, is it gonna come from all of your funds? Is there gonna be any tax dollars? Do you give an absolute no, the board is not gonna support any land purchase, but yet, again, there might be something that's extremely beneficial to the community, and, you know, do you box somebody in a corner there? I don't know, but I don't think it's a good time to have that conversation at the last minute, and I say that because, you know, these are folks who have spent a lot of time working on deals, you know, and, I just wouldn't wanna see them waste their time. By the same token, we shouldn't see any surprised faces around this room when you see a warrant article, albeit petitioned or not, for, you know, $300,000, $400,000, it's like, oh, where did that come from, you know? And it's then competing with a piece of apparatus or something else that is critical need, and now we've created an automatic conflict, you know, for the community to pick and choose. Should that conversation take place now, or should it take place in December, January? Because last time, things happened all in December and January.
That's when they usually do happen.
I understand that, but
That's when the
It's a cycle.
that's when the negotiations culminate.
I appreciate that, but sometimes, again, if we're gonna take a leadership position and we're gonna hold true to something, then it's, you know, if we're not interested in any land purchases in 2011 on the March warrant, and we let that be known that we will not support any of them, then the cards are on the table. And then if they wanna proceed, they can, on their own merit, or maybe they wanna proceed only with smaller ones, which they have monies in their fund. I'm just throwing that out, I don't, if this board does not think that we're gonna be putting any land articles on, you know, then we should let that be known now to the folks that are negotiating, because we would be wasting their time and those of the landowners in this community.
Should that be an item for discussion when we review the CIP?
Well,
It won't appear in CIP
Yeah.
if,
Well,
it
I
might
mean,
not appear in CIP, which it didn't last year.
well, it hasn't been submitted yet.
Right.
but at that time, we're going to
But we don't,
pretty well formalize the major portions of the budget.
but we don't,
And if,
we don't do that.
yes, but put our discussion out there that this board may not support any land purchases, just to let it be known, as we're doing now.
See, I'm not closed-minded to it, I'm just saying, I think we have to take a look at using conservation or open space funds and not using taxpayer funds, you know?
I think you painted that picture pretty thoroughly at the all boards meeting. You know, the economic climate and that we weren't looking to do that.
But then I'm hearing a planning board meeting, which it seems like it's going in the opposite direction, I'm getting two different
And you-
conflicting messages
Well,
here.
you got conflicting messages that night at the all
And in
boards.
fairness to conservation, because I remember talking to the chair last year, she didn't know that they had, if you recall, last year, you had, the open space was working on the Roberts Farm. Then you had another individual, Mr. Adams was talking to the one behind the villa, and got that thing going. We had, the Board of Selectmen was working for a year or two on the Barnard property, and she had 3 competing, land purchases. So, and at the time, conservation was not advocating for the, villa, you know, the property behind the villa, because it was in conflict with what they were trying to do. So, I mean, I'm getting, the consensus that I'm hearing is that there doesn't seem to be too much interest in the land purchase in 2011. The bigger question is, when do we have that, convey that message, or do you think we did convey it?
I think we have to formulate our budget message and then send that out to departments,
Okay.
committees,
Okay.
commissions. I mean, I think we need to consolidate what we're planning on.
That's a
our
good,
budget.
that's a good
Segue
segue.
right into
That's
the
a great
budget committee.
segue into the budget committee. Attended the budget committee meeting, last Tuesday, and I'll just cut right to the chase. And I don't know if I've gotten the letter from Dan yet. I have to check I checked my emails at home. But the long story short is we should expect a letter or an email from the chairman to Sue or myself, letting them know that they took a vote and they are giving guidance to both the school board and the town board of selectmen that they expect the 2011 warrant to be 10%, all the warrant articles, including the budget, will be 10% less than the current operating budget.
Did you see that correctly?
I believe I did. And if I'm off, I apologize, but
You included the warrant
The
articles?
2011,
all warrant articles,
the
To be less than the
2011,
operating budget?
10% less than the current operating budget this year.
And
The
and special articles.
special
And
articles.
special
Oh,
articles,
okay,
right,
'cause
right,
I thought.
And
the
does that
color was-
include
okay.
contracts?
Yes.
Let me ask you a question. What's the number that we gotta be 10% less of?
This
The
year's,
minutes are now posted online if you wanted to.
Give me the
refer them.
number that was supposed to be less 10%.
Okay. Can I give you a ballpark number?
That's fine.
Around 20 million? A little under 20 million?
And we wanna be 10% less?
Right, so we would have to be coming in at $18 million, and
Okay.
that includes our budget, all warrant articles, and any warrant articles that have to do with contracts.
Okay, what's the budget for the library and Parks and Rec combined?
don't quote me, 600 and change for the library, 400 and change, about a 1 million,
If we
1 point.
eliminate all non-essential services, do we meet that goal?
It depends what you deem as non-essential.
Library and Parks and Rec,
No.
okay? How much are we shy?
I'm thinking 800,000 to 1 million.
How many police officers do we have to lay off to get to that, half of that number?
I don't know. I don't know.
How many firemen do we have to lay off? How many DPW workers and how many town hall staff?
Well, you have capital costs too. I mean, you have, our budget is comprised of that. Don't get me wrong, I think
I'm
it's.
just trying to figure out how we're gonna do it.
Yeah. So that's where we're at.
You're on the order of 15, 20 people.
Okay.
So, and that was, I think the quote was, that's their starting point. So I don't know what the ending point is, so. I don't know if the ending point is lower or it's higher number than that, but, so that was the message.
And we just swore in a new police officer.
So I just wanna try to convey to you what I had said personally, because I don't, if I speak for the board, I let them know that. I told them that I can't speak for the board, but I said my own personal opinion is that there's a lot of discussions about advice and advisory, and I'm like, the budget committee in our town is not an advisory budget committee. They are an official budget committee. They are the ones who actually prepare the budget. My concern is that, one, and I made it known, I don't know where the 10% came from. I just don't know.
That's why
I don't know,
I
if if that right number should be a 6.2% reduction, a 1% increase, a 3% increase, a 12%, I don't know where 10% came from. So there was a couple of things there. The other thing too that I just wanted to clarify, and I wasn't there at the time, but it was stated in that there was some sort of, it was an implication that there was like some trickery or shenanigans by the board at the end of last year's budget cycle. And last year, we went in and we had a difference of opinion, and I think we made it, kind of well known that we had a difference of opinion on our budget, and it was like a $480 or something $1,000 difference. We all know that we met that evening and we threw out different numbers, and we didn't get a majority on making any changes to that. So we went forward with what our original motion was, and that was, again, to split the difference, and that's what was voted on in a deliberative session. So I don't think that there was anybody trying to pull any trickery like that. I think we were well known what we were trying to accomplish. I personally have concerns with a 10% reduction. I don't think that it is doable. That being said, I would just assume we would prepare our budget and let the budget committee prepare their budget. We'll have two different budgets, that's all. They, by statute, have to do their public hearing. We would do a public hearing on our budget and explain why we're doing what we're doing. They would have to do the same. So, that's what I would do, but I don't act for the board, so. Nick?
I was gonna ask, when will we discuss
Targets? and
our
stuff?
guidance?
Right. I think we have to do that now. I mean, when I say now, I mean in the short run. I think in the next couple of weeks, we have to decide where we want to go. And I think for a multitude of reasons. One, we're getting into the phase where we're asking our department heads to start their budget preparations. That's one. So we have to give them guidance. Two, in our non-meeting format or whatever, we have contracts that are up, and that has an implication as to what our budget will look like, or what the warrant article will look like. So we have to have those discussions, so.
But that seems, we need to set our budget priorities and forecast first. And then everything else, I think, needs to work around that. I don't think we can do our contracts or our, anything else and then try to get the budget.
No,
Then
I think we're on
we've
the,
missed the
I mean,
boat.
I'm on the same page with you. I know exactly what you're saying, but, I think we have to take a look at where do we think our revenues are going, and that's always a moving target for us, because the state changes, like the wind, and sometimes you get revenues, and sometimes you don't get revenues. We have no clue what will happen with this, Obama administration, so we don't know if there will be stimulus 2, 3, 6, who knows, what will happen there. There has been more talk about another stimulus package for state and local government. Who knows if that will ever happen. Not really sure what the revenue picture will look like. We know what it'll look like more on the town side. We have no clue what it'll look like on the school side. So I think all of those things, factor in. We do know where we stand right now in terms of our expenses. We know in terms of shared revenues what we might be seeing. We've been pretty good on our revenue side. We haven't seen any type of dramatic changes on the revenue
Right,
side,
the
so.
auditor before you got
Right,
here said we're
right.
within 0.5%.
Right, so we're pretty
projections.
solid there. So it's just a matter of, we have to then decide if our revenues, again, are gonna remain flat going into 2011, which is what it appears to be again, with no substantial increases. That's where we have to, try to, I don't know where we're gonna stand with, these houses on Abington Square, what that's gonna bring in for additional taxes. We'll be getting tax money now for this new development behind the Shell station, that building. So there has been some
I think our
construction going.
occupancy is coming shortly.
Right.
Yeah.
On that.
So, there are some things that, we haven't really had anything going on in the town for the last 2 to 3 years, so now we're starting to see some activity, things going online. So, but I do think that we probably wanna take a look at this start looking at targets as to where we're gonna be. Yeah.
And I think we just have to use the best information we have right now, because typically, what I've seen in the past is we don't know what this number's gonna be, so we wait, and we don't know what this number's gonna be, and we
Right.
haven't got insurance numbers yet, and typically, we end up not knowing anything until the last minute, and then we're trying to backtrack again.
Yeah, I think.
Whereas I think we need to just make assumptions based on where we are now, and if those assumptions brighten, then that's great.
Right, and I would be more inclined to go with more worst-case scenarios.
Exactly,
So like,
worst
so
case
like on health
scenarios and-
insurance, I'd go 15 or 20% increase in premium.
I think what we wanted to do in health insurance is wait till the July 1st rates come out
Alright.
and see what those are and maybe go with that. Although traditionally we're a little lower than the July 1st rates, but I think
But
that would be
I'd rather be worst case and then back off than all of a sudden be, we gotta come up with another $300,000 because we underestimated something and.
One of our upcoming milestones is, there's a Saturday session for all the department heads.
October 23rd.
Oh,
What
yeah.
are
That's for
presentations?
budget
That's in
presentation.
October,
Department
yeah.
head presentations,
The
yes.
Department heads to this board jointly with the budget committee board.
Correct. But I think they wanna get a handle on it before then.
I think it's only fair to the
It's too
department
late.
heads, we can't wait till then, we have to do this in the short
Well, let's
term.
see what the July 1st numbers are. I'll report back to you on those insurance numbers. They should be released shortly.
Alright.
You can tell me if that's a number you want me to use on putting together the.
Nick, I don't think if we go, like, we're like 2 weeks from that date. I think if we wait 2 weeks to then come up with where our targets are gonna be, I think that gives the department heads all of July and all of August to really work on their budget, and actually September too, to really work on their budgets as to where we're gonna be. I'm seeing, we're, head nod, we're okay there?
As long as we give firm guidance, we
Okay.
say whether it's come in the same as this year, or give
Right.
us 2 budgets this year and 2%, whatever.
Gotcha, I
But
gotcha.
as long as they have some clear guidance as to what we're looking for, when we have our
Okay,
presentation.
so one of the things that we will need to, and again, I don't think there's any urgency to address it now, but, when we do have that discussion, I think in fairness to the budget committee, if we're going to have a departure from past practice, then I think we just need to communicate that. So I think we have plenty of time, we haven't gotten the official letter from Dan, and Dan, if you sent it to me, I apologize, I'll have to check my emails again. But I think we have a few weeks they're taking the summer off anyway.
Right.
But I think in fairness to them, it will require them to, perhaps develop their own budget, and I think we need to give them ample time to do that.
They would
Uh,
develop it from the selectmen, from the department head budget, is that what you're saying?
It's not gonna change from the process, would it?
Um,
We're gonna have a budget, we're gonna give it to the budget committee, they're gonna work on that budget, and then they're gonna present.
Not necessarily, we don't have to do that. I mean, we don't,
That-
How do we not?
That was his point, that they're not an advisory budget.
they're not
committee.
advisory, and that's typically what an advisory budget committee, so we've had a very hybrid type system here. And I guess where I'm driving at is that, you know, they would then have to fill in all MS7 lines and then some, just like we would have to do, and develop a budget. You know, I mean, it's really easy as to what Selectman Devanza was saying. You know, I can cut 10% across everything, but where am I taking it from? And, you know, we're the ones who have to implement the budget. You know, personally, if we're gonna, I heard some of the budget committee members say, oh yeah, I know of plenty of ways, I can talk to the department heads and it's easy. Well, if it's so easy, then do it. I mean, I don't agree that it's so easy, and I think, you know, cutting $2 million from your budget and your warrant articles is that'll require some very significant cuts in services.
No, can I just say something? They can talk to department heads, and they can tell you where to cut 10% out of a department head's budget and provide the same level of service. Would you ask them to please share that with us?
I'm still confused on the process here.
The RSAs state that the budget committee is in charge of preparing the budget, not that the Board of
Okay.
Selectmen is.
So you're saying that we're gonna be out of it completely?
No, I think we prepare our own budget.
Under what, and where does that budget go?
It would be this, basically, I don't know if you wanna, I haven't even talked to you about
We-
this, but
We prepare our budget and do what with it? We can't bring it to
Well,
public
the
hearing.
Yes, you
MS7
can.
has, yeah, the
Yes, you can.
MS7 has
Two
a
separate lines.
selectmen's column.
And a
it
budget
has
committee
a budget
column.
committee column.
so we would just prepare our own budget, and we would articulate the reasons why, and it could be, an increase of a certain percentage, it could be a decrease, it could be a
Which-
level funded, it could
Which
be
budget
anything.
goes to the deliberative session?
The budget committee's
The budget committees.
So again, I guess what I'm saying is we kinda sit out of the process and we just put a number into the MS7.
Oh, well, at the deliberative session, if you don't agree with the budget committees, then you would
Present your own.
present your own budget and the reasons why.
I think we're taking an adversarial approach to this. We should be working with the budget committee.
I think the budget committee's taking an adversarial approach when you say a 10% reduction, when you make no, rationale as to where you got the 10%. And,
Well, I don't
think that's
necessarily,
adversarial, but,
I'm not necessarily saying I agree with that number,
yeah.
but I think, I understand where they're going. They're recognizing the economic times. But I think we need to work with them, do a good job on the budget,
Which I think we can do.
and come to an agreement versus right off the bat saying, well, we're just gonna do our own thing and.
Well, isn't that what you just heard from them, at 10%?
Yeah.
I mean,
Send us
I'm just
guidance.
reversing the process. Having sat with them last year and then have been on the budget committee before, and part of that, I've always believed that if someone has a thought process or a recommendation within that budget, I don't care for and I said that clearly last year, I don't care when someone takes an MS7 line and says, here's the number. Because it doesn't paint me the picture of what you're looking for. If there's an addition, well, what increased service are you looking for? If there's a reduction, how do you foresee that? And I think, I'm fine working with the budget committee, but I think there has to be more than just, here's that number. If
You figure it out.
And figure it out.
That's
It has-
adversarial.
That is not working with me.
Yeah.
That's just saying, here's a number that we think is great. Well, okay, if that's the number you think, how do you envision what that service looks for? And I'm not gonna go into that whole thing of, oh, that means that's crossing guards and all that stuff. But we should be talking intelligently, saying, you know what, if I am doing that reduction, where are you looking at it for? And is it in operations? Is it in labor? Give me an idea where you're going. I mean, I don't have to have the exact line and a number, but what are you talking about in big picture? Maybe if you're talking a reduction I'm just throwing out there to say within a fire department, are you talking about, is it one less truck, or is it a building that you're looking at? I mean, in other words, we're gonna go into two facilities. Give me an idea of what you're trying to say when someone says a reduction, and that's all I'm looking for. I mean, some people say, well, you're getting caught into that exact line. Well, no, I don't want the exact line, but give me a picture. And I think we should have conversation with the budget committee, and I think that should be where it is. And we understand the economic conditions, we understand what they're trying to do, and I understand that. But give me a better picture of how we wanna get there.
But I think that's our job.
That's their job, too.
Actually, officially,
Did they-
it's their job,
In fact,
not our
yeah,
job.
I mean, it's their job, too.
Did they say this is going to be the budget, or did they say this is the guidance that we're
They
giving
said
you?
that's the
we
starting
want-"
point.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
I just think we get more.
Need to continue what we've done in the past few years. We present a budget to the committee. The school board does the same thing, and then they will dissect that as, according to how they feel the voters can pay. So I don't know why we're having a lot of this discussion right now before we haven't even had input from our department chiefs and or provided guidance to our department chiefs.
What we're talking is preliminary conversations going forward, and what happened last year was department heads came in, then the budget went from them to us, to the budget committee, and then when it got to the budget committee, it just became an MS7 line saying, well, here's the number, let's just change it to that. What's the reasoning? Well, we just think it's a good number,
And they
and it's not,
didn't-
that's
there
not
was no
acceptable.
explanation.
That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable anywhere. It wouldn't be acceptable, it's not acceptable, it wasn't acceptable last year, and I won't find it acceptable this year.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
After listening to this, okay? And I think what was interpreted last year, okay? And we strive, we talk about, trying to communicate. And I think what, was misinterpreted was when we split the number on the budget, between our budget and the budget committee's number. We did that in a spirit of cooperation, okay? But I don't think we communicated that very well, and it definitely was not interpreted as such. But I think it behooves us to, as Nick said, you know, develop our guidelines, get that to the department heads, have our presentation, presentation to us, as we've done in the last couple of years with the budget committee. Then we go through our budget, we develop the budget, and present that to the budget committee. And then try to get that discussion. I mean, as Steve said, I mean, that's been some of the things that I've tried to say over the year, and exactly, I mean, you seem to sound exactly, your frustration seems to be the frustration I had about 2 years ago when you're going with this bottom line number. Because the reason why you make a budget up by lines. When you go through and you develop those lines, you look and say, for example, how many bulletproof vests am I gonna put in this line? Okay, I'm gonna put X amount in there, and how do I get to X amount? Because I have this, and that's why I need that much, and that's why that number is in there. And you go through all these lines and you come up with the bottom number. And if you say, I'm just gonna cut the bottom line, what are you saying to that person? I said, okay, well, are you telling me instead of
Okay,
how many bulletproof vests do I take?
I understand all that, but unless I've been like watching the wrong community's public access channel, the last couple of years, it's been the budget committee wants to get to a certain number, and they do not go line by line, or they do go line by line for 2 months, and then at the end, it's let's just cut certain percentages or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I understand, and that's the frustration. I think, though, that we, in that process, interaction with the budget committee, all right, that has to be expressed. Is how do you substantiate that number? I mean, you say this 10% number. How did you come up with this 10%? And that's the starting point.
I
Okay?
tried, I asked that question, I didn't get a
Well,
response.
but I understand, but I just have a concern that at this point in the process, by taking that approach, okay, doesn't show a willingness to cooperate. All right? I mean, what we need to do is we need to be able to develop a budget for the community, okay? Number one, that's gonna provide in my opinion, that's gonna provide the services, a level of services that the community expects. And it's up to us to be able to show that that budget that we provided, or we've come up with, that number that we've come up with, provides that level of service.
Okay, so let me get this straight. If we go in with a budget that is the same as this year's budget, and let's just say that it's so it's not the 10% less, it's 0. It's no increase. No increase in taxes, period. That would fall short 10% of what the budget committee's guidance was.
Okay.
All right? Then what? So we'll go through that whole 2 and 3 month period of time. We'll go at the last, and we'll have all these conversations about whether or not the bulletproof vest was needed, whether or not we needed to get another defibrillator
Scott,
here,
but in
or whether or
that-
not to
in
buy
that
more flags
process-
for the flagmen. And then we're gonna start to say, you know what, I don't like that $2.3 million budget for the fire department, so I just knocked off $230,000, so do it, chief, for $2 million, and you figure it out. Or selectmen, that's where you're paid the big bucks, you do it. That's a contradiction to what you just said. What you said is that we should have line-by-line discussions of what can be deferred, what can't be deferred, et cetera. But that's not what happens, and Steve had to do it last year, and it's very frustrating. You spend 3-4 months going through every friggin' line item, okay? And then at the end, it's like, oh, let's cut, $500,000, $1 million, and it's a waste of time. Tell me that now, which I think they're courteous in saying it now. And I'm
Right.
good with that.
But
I just
Scott,
disagree.
Scott, what I wanna hear, okay, is if there's somebody in the community that says that they can sit down with a department head and they can reduce that department head's budget by 10% and not reduce the services, by all means, come into the Board of Selectmen. If it's the police, you can do that with the police department, I will gladly meet with you and the chief. Sit down, show me how you can, or come to the Board of Selectmen, show us how you can do that, because I really like to know how to do that. And if we can do that, let's
That's a win.
hear
No,
it, but let's
listen, I
hear
think-
it. And maybe in that discussion, we'll learn something from them, and maybe they'll learn something for us, and maybe they'll look, gee, maybe we really can't do that.
All right. You can sub for me when I miss a few of them. You can see. You can
As long as I'm not in
you can-
negotiations at the time.
You can pinch hit. You wanted to add anything?
Yeah.
Yes, you got something?
But I think it just goes to the process. Budget committee gave us guidance for X dollars. We're gonna go through our process and come up with Y dollars. They may be the same, they may not be, but then it's our job to communicate that to the budget committee, and then they do their job. They may or may not agree with us, they may cut, they may not. If it's frustrating, that's why they pay you the big bucks to sit as the rep to the budget committee. But then in the end, we've followed the process. But if we just start right now by saying, you know what, budget committee, you do your thing, we're gonna go off on our own because we don't agree with you, you're starting off with an adversarial position, and no matter what we come up with, it's gonna be attacked, and
I guess I'll express my concerns with that, to respond, is that I think that it would be extremely challenging for us to come in with the same exact budget as this year. Okay. Because we know we're gonna have increases in health insurance, we're gonna have contracts that might be there, et cetera. So I think that in and of itself will require a great deal of pain. We will not be able to staff as we have or provide the same amount of services, and that is on,
Scott,
let me just finish. So that's with a 0% increase, okay? So if I'm going into it knowing that it will be hard just to go in with a 0% increase, and even if I said to myself, okay, let's go 3% decrease, that looks like it's gonna be, it's even more painful. To say that what we just talked about before when we started this whole thing, what would a $2-point-something million reduction be? How many people are we gonna have to lay off? And what type of services are gonna be impacted? So I'm looking at where I see as the best case scenario for me as a selectman coming in at a budget number, and I'm looking at 10% is gonna be our starting point. Right off the bat, I'm going into a negotiation with here, and I'm here. I'm not here.
You're forgetting the other 10% for the special articles.
I'm just saying, if I'm here, then fine, and we'll massage it out. We've always done it. But when we're starting here and here, don't waste my time. That's me. You're 4 votes, I don't wanna go that route, that's your prerogative, I follow your orders.
Just to recap last year a little bit, we did go through the whole process as Nick spoke. And in the end, what it came down to was, it really didn't matter about lines, cause no one wanted to discuss lines.
Right.
It became a dollar figure. And the frustrating part for me was, I sat through the budget process here with you. We sat with department heads, we had them come here and do that. We had department heads come over and sit every night, for twice a week, sometimes 3 times, sitting there while the budget committee deliberated. And then in the end, it was just, let's just take the number
Yeah.
and do a percentage. And that, remember how it became became a percentage across the board? And there was always that conversation, well, departments are made up different, et cetera, but that's not, and I don't wanna digress into that part, but the reality was, it was just based upon a figure, and here's the number we wanna get to. That's not a preparation of a budget, that's that's just setting a budget number. And if we're going to just set a budget number with the budget committee, why are we making department heads come through, do all these projects, all this work, why are we sitting through all these meetings? That is not due diligence. That's not due diligence. That's not what we've been entrusted to do, that's what we were expected to do. If someone wanted to say, hey, we're all gonna sit around the table and say, I think we come in 5%, 10%, that's not budgeting. Cause you're not explaining where that differences are coming from, and that's what transpired last year.
But there's nothing that stops this board from saying to the department heads, we want you to come in and present us a 10% reduction, a 5% reduction, a 2%, and give us these budgets. I do it all the time, they tell us. We want 8%, 5%, 2%, 0%. And we give those projections. This is what, you want 10%? This is what it is. It's 3 people, 25 people, whatever. And you lay it out. So you're not playing catch-up afterwards. You know what the scenario is.
And let me ask you the question, cause I sat with Parks and Rec, and I believe their budgets are like 360,000. And if someone was to say 10%, that would be 30,000. I think their salary budget is 130,000. I mean, so that number doesn't fit. Do you follow what I'm saying?
It can fit, it just has ramifications.
Well, yeah, it has, okay, in an apartment of 2 people, it's kind of
More than 2, there's 3.
well,
And
excuse me,
part-timers.
three and then the part-time.
Well, the ramifications are maybe you don't open up your pools. There you go.
That's my point, is it's not
I understand-
impossible,
I understand
but
it,
you can lay them out.
But I'm just saying, I think there are certain places that you differentiate, not just say across the board. And that goes back to looking at the lines, because what does it mean for us as a community in what we provide? Or what we're willing to give up?
And I think we're gonna be, even at a best-case scenario, I think we're giving up this year. I think it's gonna be.
agree.
I don't think we can maintain a status quo this year. I don't see it happening. I see us being down bodies. I do not see it status quo.
And I guess that's why I say you can't go line by line, because you can justify every single line. You have to give percentages, and you have to then see what it looks like. And it's the department head's job to take that percentage and work it the way they prioritize it.
And I agree with you totally there in regards that, when I say line by line, I'm not exactly drawn into the exact line, the exact line, but if someone says, hey, I'm going to a certain department, and I'm thinking that I wanna do a reduction here because I don't think we need this amount of people or something like that, I can understand what they're trying to paint. What does that mean within that department? But when someone just goes to the MS7 line, I'm not sure what they mean. Are they saying don't buy certain, fixed cost things, or are they talking about the labor? And I think there was a part last year, and I'll put it right out there now. I think there was a part by doing that, you hide behind the number and not talk to the reality of what that means. And I think that got missed last year.
And why spend 2 or 3 months arguing
right.
about
And-
$500 items
and-
here?
And if someone wants to talk to me about a percentage, especially 10%, have the political guts to say, here's what I think this means. Don't hide behind a number.
If this
That's
means,
what I'm
right,
expecting.
if this means that we gotta go down 3 cops and 3 firefighters
Have the
and shut the
political guts to
library
say it.
another day, and that we're not gonna offer a summer program or close down the pools, and we're gonna lay off 4 guys from
That has to come
DPW,
from the department
then
heads.
that's,
My
No,
point.
So
that
this-
doesn't
No,
come
no,
from the
not
department heads.
necessarily.
This is
The-
what
that
I
comes
hear
from the
you
Board of
all saying.
Selectmen.
is we do our best to put together a single budget, and then, when we send that to the budget committee, we have footnotes down at the bottom that says, if we wish to achieve a 10% cut in a certain department, here are our going-in options. And you lay out the 3 or 4 options to make it happen. Because the other way of doing all that is we simply send the budget to the budget committee with no dialogue. They hash it over, perhaps the same scenario that Selectman Fournier mentioned will occur. Then we are in a reactive mode. We come back and says, and that's what happened last year, we were in a reactive mode. These are the things that might occur if those cuts occur. So, we can be, I think, Selectman Camposano mentioned, sort of was leaning that way. We say up front what's gonna happen with certain cuts.
But the only way we're gonna know that is if we give
That's-
direction to our department heads to say, give us those scenarios.
That's right, so end of discussion right now. They've just got the message.
I'm not sure if it's a done deal, no pun intended.
I try.
What? I think
Just
where,
trying to-
I think where we're at
Trying to
is.
keep the chief on schedule, cause he's an hour late back there.
Next, we'll move on to library trustees. They met, they talked a lot about their job descriptions, and then they went in and they talked about merit-based system, which I was not a part of that discussion, so. That was really the gist of their meeting. Parks and Rec?
I'll make it short and sweet. I think one of the main things that happened, I'm gonna read a letter that Mike McKinnon wrote to us. He is resigning. He says, "This letter is to officially inform you of my formal resignation from the Parks and Rec Commission effective July 1st, 2010. It has been a privilege and an honor to serve the community of Goffstown, New Hampshire, my hometown, for the past 12 years. I would like to thank the commission and residents of Goffstown for their support during this time period." Mike McKinnon, so we definitely appreciate all he's done. I think he's been a great part of the Parks and Rec. Like anything else, after 12 years, he thinks he wants to spend a little more time with family, but we definitely appreciate what he's done. So I do have this letter, and I will forward it on, and
Has the commission accepted it, or?
the commission did accept this,
Okay.
and, so at this point, I guess there will be an opening, but, if Mike's out there, thank you very much for the 12 years and the work he's done.
We need a, we need a motion to accept,
Yeah,
and then.
I'll make a
and then-
motion to accept his resignation
send the
with
letter.
regrets.
Okay.
Okay.
We have a motion to accept the resignation with regrets. That's been made by Selectman Devanza and seconded by Selectman Fournier. All those in favor, say aye.
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 And also to direct the town administrator to send a letter,
Well, I think it should be signed by the entire board.
okay, by the board, thanking
Thank you,
Mike
Tim.
for all of his years of service.
And the only other high point, well, a couple quick points, Mr. Pierce did come in to have a preliminary conversation regarding Rails to Trails and how it's proceeding, and people in the Parks and Rec Department did appreciate that. The only other thing of high note was that the pool at Roy Park is losing water. Did I say?
Pool? You
what
said
did I-
pole, I thought.
I'm sorry, pool. I appreciate it.
I thought you could say the pole fell in the pool, that's why it's losing water.
But this.
Put a hole in the bottom.
Rick says he's putting 3 inches of water in every day it's losing. And so, so we were talking about that a little bit.
Hey, it's not going into the Rosemont drainage pipe, is it?
Well, at 3 inches, we were trying to calculate how many gallons that is.
That'll be at
know,
least
that's why I'm
6
asking
dump
that
trucks
question.
every day.
5,000 dump trucks a day, yeah.
But, so he is gonna
No,
have it.
tanker trucks.
So we are going to,
Whatever.
we talked with Rick, and also he's gonna have someone go out there to look, because we don't know if this could be undermining, et cetera, but.
And BP is doing this or something? or-
Correct,
I'm
but,
sorry.
and we say this kind of jokingly, but the reality is both pools were in rough shape coming into this year. I mean, they're in sad shape, and as we talk about budgets, and we talk about what goes on next year, these are some of the issues that are coming up, and these pools were patched together this year. I don't know, don't know if anyone knew that, but anyway. Just one of those things, but
All right.
I'll move it on.
CIP, SIP.
CIP met, we had presentations from the library trustees, Mike Lawler and Jen Foley were in. They explained the projects that they had, there's nothing pending for 2011, there was the parking lot expansion, as well as the future building expansion, but those are in out years. And then we had the school district came in and did their presentation, and they're actually pushing almost all of their CIP projects out. I believe they only have 4 projects for this up-and-coming CIP. 2 are bond obligations, and they're also gonna be looking at, attempting to refinance their bonds. And the other 2 are the Bartlett and Maple Ave building performance upgrades, which were ongoing projects with Honeywell. They were cost avoidance. Those are the only projects that are on CIP. Everything else has been deferred to out years.
All right. Better late than never. Fire Chief O'Brien. So, Chief, you got 2.5 minutes.
Give me 2.
No pink slip in there, is there?
That would be a 20%.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chief.
With the urgency of the board urging me to look at the part-time and call member pay program that we currently have, and looking at rates and what could be done to improve the system, I looked at what other departments currently do. I also looked at trends on what are the needs of the department and the trends of the activity that we're currently up against, and also looking at my call force to find out what they would like also to see. So what we're able to come together is a new pay incentive program, and I named it that way because it is an incentive program, because we're trying to get personnel on the call force and part-time force here in the fire department to respond when needed. Just to give you an example, our call numbers are up at least 100 calls over this time last year, just to give you an example of how busy we are becoming. So what we did is we designed we took a step back from the current pay matrix, which is quite complex. It has at least 50 steps to it, to a pay matrix, or a pay scale we call it, to include level of certifications, pay parity within the region for fire and EMS response crew, a recruitment and retention program that's reliable and competent to retain competent staff, and to also include a point system that encourages our folks to respond when needed. And then finally, part of the program includes a performance appraisal component to it. So with that said, with the new pay program, it would take their current rates and freeze them. So in the past, they would automatically get annual COLAs, regardless of their performance or their standing or their certifications, and they would continually get COLAs. So, but that was never really incentive for our folks to come out and respond when we needed them. So, after discussing with some of my senior call force folks, they said we need to encourage our members to get out and respond. And the pay isn't necessarily the issue. It's making sure that we get the trucks rolling when somebody calls 911. So with that said, the new pay matrix includes basically freezing the folks that are on the old matrix and keeping their rate. They don't automatically get raises unless they improve in the certifications under the new pay matrix. It also, in order to stay whole within the matrix, they have to stay active. And we incorporated an activity points system where it actually was developed, and the standard was developed by the call force on where they felt a typical member of the department should be in regards to activity. For example, if somebody responded to a fire call, they would get 3 points. And if somebody responded for the ambulance, would get 4. So, and if you just took on a training activity, it would be 1 point. And each station, if you're assigned to a station, each station has a standard-based threshold. For example, Station 18 and 19 members the threshold be 90 points a year. And some people go, well, that's a lot. But no, not really. If you think about it, if you do training and you do calls, you'll meet that 90 points easily. It's the folks that don't come out, and we invest a lot of time and effort in training and equipment and protective clothing that don't come out. And it frustrates even the call force members when they don't show up. So they felt this program was solid, where it benefited the folks that came out, and it kind of kept an eye on the people that don't show up, and it put the onus on them to make sure that they became active enough. And if they didn't become active enough, they went to a base pay rate for about 6 months, and if they're not active from there on out, they're just asked to resign on their own because they're not benefiting the department. And finally, in order to scale up through the pay matrix, they had to have a satisfactory performance evaluation done. And that's done by their supervisor or their officers and approved by the deputy chief and myself. So there was some performance guidance on that too. And it, again, throws the onus back onto the member. If they want to move up the matrix for the pay scale, they have to get with their officer and stay in touch with them and give them some ideas on where they're at, how active they can be, and protect, particularly if there's any problems, they'll be able to address them quicker than later. So with that said, I'm here in front of the board to ask the approval to go move forward starting next week with the new fire department call part-time member pay matrix, which stabilizes the matrix. It simplifies it because it goes from everything from a call probationary member, which is a base rate, to an EMT up to lieutenant, and all the certifications that go along with that. And then it goes through an A through I pay scale at 2% per pay scale. Again, nobody automatically gets a jump in the pay matrix unless they perform that they're both serving the community and they have a satisfactory performance evaluation.
Questions on the board?
Steve and me.
I guess it's kind of a two-parter. How many do we have on call now? And of those on call, and I'm looking at this point piece that you're talking about, 90, how many do you think would qualify in your points, in the way you're rating them, that would qualify for 90 points? I'm not looking for that exact number, but, would you think, so how many are on call, and what percentage do you think would meet how they're doing it now?
Right, it fluctuates on activity, and that's why it gives, say we have 50 people on the rolls for the call force right now. It's approximate.
Okay, all right.
It fluctuates.
All right.
Say if 20%, looking at the group now, 20% may struggle to meet that minimum criteria.
Okay.
But then again, we're getting so busy that we have to entice active folks on the department. And again, we've got applicants in the waiting to get on the department, but when it costs $2,000 up to $2,500 between training and equipment to get them started, it's a costly endeavor for us. So if somebody can't really be that active, I'd rather invest on somebody that'd be interested in helping us.
You have any other questions?
Yeah, one other question, well, you don't mind. so let's just say, look at just doing quick numbers and just roughly rounding out, you're saying, hey, at about 20% are just not as active as you would like to be in what they, regarding being trained and participating within the process. And so that roughly translates into around 10 people. So is that what you're thinking? And that you're saying, hey, the cost of uniform, outfitting, et cetera, we'll put it and utilize it better. On this as they come in, are they how do they work in with the rotation regarding if someone calls in sick or if someone's out on vacation? Are they part of that rotation also? And do they gain, so in other words, if they came in, they would, let's say a guy comes in for a week, he could put a fair amount of points on. Is that, I guess, be the question. Are they part of the vacation and sick rotations?
Some of them are. First of all,
It's by choice, is that what you're saying?
they have to choose to do that.
Okay.
They get time available, and then they have to be a licensed EMT with the state, and they have to be firefighter 1 and be able to drive our apparatus with a license. So, but again, trying to find somebody that's, on the call force that has the time during the day to cover those shifts. We do have a number of people in the call force that can do that, and they do help us out immensely, but not everybody does. The more we take on, it opens the opportunity.
So they have to have a license to drive, a CDL license that we're talking about, or?
CDL, or to drive the ambulance, you just need a
And how many of those 50 people actually are firefighter 1, hold a CDL, so they would qualify for that rotation, roughly?
I'd have to look at my list, just to throw out a number. I'm probably looking at, there's some that are qualified, we get a number of them that qualified, but they choose not to.
No.
But right now, we have approximately up to 10, maybe 12 that may be qualified that could take shift.
Next.
In your defining what it means to be an active person for your force, you're accumulating points, and the points are for training situations and responding. Could you just take training out of that point system completely and just make it mandatory at a 6-month, 9-month, 12-month, and only award those points if they're responding?
That was a good discussion we had with the call force and both with our training captain is we want to encourage them to meet a minimum amount of training also, so they stay up with their skills, but they also do a number of incidents. So we said that, well, we don't want somebody just to take all training classes and get points doing it that way.
Yes.
And just do it, or just doing calls and getting their points that way. So we said that that there has to be good mix between the both. You have to have some minimum number of training points, and then there's a minimum number of call points. So I think it's strong language within the plan to say you just can't do one or the other.
Any other questions?
I'll reserve my time, and I'll.
Would you like to give it to yield to
Yes,
someone
I'll
else?
yield.
To the distinguished selectman from Bernardville? No, not anymore.
East Dunbarton.
East Dunbarton,
Outlying
outlying areas.
Oh, it's okay, I'll pass. I don't have a
Anyone?
question.
Nick?
I like the idea of the incentives, keeping firefighters active. My only question, I guess, is to the board. We haven't had a discussion yet on what we're doing town-wide for matrices, or, and is this premature to put a new pay matrix out before we've looked at what we're doing overall?
Here's my take. Personally, I think some of these discussions are non-public discussions, because they have to do with compensation. I'm not personally ready right now to vote I will abstain, because I think that some of them have an interplay with what Nick just said, and I think it's compensation, and I think we should have it in a non-public setting. So, that's just me. Anyone else?
But if I could comment on the concept, I like the concept where we're requiring people to stay active.
Right, we're not.
Versus just getting on the force and,
Performance-based.
it's performance-based, and I like that, I wanna preserve that.
Did you mention on the accumulation of the points for being active in the, on your force, what was the length of time to accumulate these points?
It's measured over a 12-month period. And it could be prorated, for example, if, we also put in a stipulation that if somebody feels that they have to become inactive because of whatever reason, say if a family member became ill and couldn't respond in a typical scenario, we build that in, so as long as we know about it, it's not gonna be worded against them. So for example, if they're
Thanks.
accumulating,
I'm concerned, excuse me, I'm concerned that that's too long of a time. If you had at the 6-month point, you're on probation, you've gotta up the beat and, lay the law down to increase their participation on your force. That's one of the emphasis of having that call force, to have them respond and
Right.
participate.
we discussed that because, for example, we have members that relocate for the summer. But beyond the month and a half in the summer, they're super active. So what do you do with that month where they're gone? Does that work against them, or do you extract that from your equation?
There's gonna be ifs, ands, or buts for
Exactly, that's what
every
we're up
person.
against.
A single rule won't fit. I'm just concerned that waiting a whole year to remove 1 or 2 people from the roster and perhaps make room for someone who does want to respond is too long of a time.
I think when this comes out, that there may be some members that know that they won't be able to perform it to this expectation, and they may say, well, I'll excuse my slot, so somebody that could perform.
Eventually, it'll be a rolling 12 months, it won't be just an annual, I would
Exactly.
assume, because if you're
Yeah.
starting in October,
Right.
right, you'd probably go October to so it wouldn't all be coming up at the same time, but.
Right.
Okay, that would help.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, if we have to do, say, 50 performance evaluations in March,
Die.
it won't
Yeah.
work. So we're working that next bug out.
Any other questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion, if you wanna go that route, or we can have more discussion in non-public with the compensation piece. Is that all right, if we
Yeah, I
go
think,
into non-public?
I think
Okay.
we need a little bit more discussion.
Okay, next is a, request authorization to expand EMT per diem pool.
We've had some experience recently where the employees that we currently have on the per diem pool that work nighttime EMS have taken full-time employment elsewhere, and their commitment to the Goffstown Fire Department has changed, leaving us in some positions where coverage has been problematic. What I'd like to do is put an ad out for a per diem, to fill per diem slots, to include EMT, for everything from EMT basic to paramedic, but I'll probably also put a stipulation that we prefer intermediate or paramedic, just to help us with the ALS level coverage.
Okay. Any, questions with regard to
Could you
that?
just explain that again? How would you word that?
It would be looking for EMT basic through EMT paramedic, obviously to include intermediate, but intermediate and paramedic preferred.
And these persons would be on duty for an entire day or days?
That'd be the nighttime EMS positions.
Just a quick question. What are you looking for? In other words, if you get 50 people apply,
If I can get 7 to 10 out of 50, I'd be happy.
Need a motion from the board? Wouldn't hurt. Motion to authorize the, fire chief to expand the EMT per diem pool by putting an advertisement, soliciting such members. Moved by Selectman Campusano, seconded by Selectman Devanza. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next is a request to accept,
Who was the first? Phil was the second?
Nick.
was the first. Okay, thank you.
request to accept a loaner truck from the Manchester Fire Department. Selectman Campusano is recusing himself
As an employee of
as an employee of the city.
One of the problems that we're constantly experiencing here at the fire department, since we've had mechanical problems with engine 5 and engine 1, is coverage with an engine. And in July, we're gonna lose engine 6 also for paint reasons. That has to go down for warranty paint work. We're probably gonna lose it for at least 2, maybe 3 weeks, depending on what they find. And then engine 1 will be going out of service for an additional week after that, again, putting us down another pump. So people say, well, why do you need a loaner pump? Well, we've experienced just in the past month probably 4 to 5 incidents, maybe more, where we've had to immediately call mutual aid to respond with an engine to assist us at a fire or multiple incidents, or a case where we had a lightning storm go through, and we had several lightning strikes in the community at the same time. We're fortunate where mutual aid was able to assist us because they didn't experience the storm as bad as we did, but it could be, we could face something maybe tomorrow or the next day where storms are widespread and they affect every community, and we just may not be able to respond with an engine right away. So to address this anyway, so we can provide basic functions of the fire department, is to request a loaner truck from the Manchester Fire Department. We've been working with Chief Parkish on this, and he's willing to give us one of their reserve engines that's in good shape, as long as we accept it as is, maintain it while it's in our hands, and insure it, and naming the city on the certificate.
Right.
With that, there's no other cost.
All right, need a motion to,
I have a question.
yes,
As far as the insurance, because Manchester is not a member of
they're
LGC.
self-insured.
They're self-insured.
Right, right. Have we checked to see what that implication, or if there's a cost or anything to that?
We work with LGC on this, and they're willing to put that truck on our insurance, and they haven't indicated whether it'd be an additional cost. They just assume that it's just gonna
Temporary
be,
substitute truck.
it's gonna be under our policy.
Yeah, Linda checked into that.
Okay, just wanna know what we're getting into, that's all.
These would be for periods of time at your discretion, because of the other trucks down?
I'm hoping that if it's for a month-long period, that'd get us to the hump. But again, something could happen, we may need it longer, but we'll talk to both the board here and Chief Parkers to see if that's acceptable.
All right. Yeah, we need a motion to request a loaner truck from Manchester during the time of engine repairs, which are forthcoming.
Is it to request or to accept?
It would be to accept a loaner truck.
I had one question though. I understand what's going on with engine 6, that's paint work, engine 1, it's going in for service, what service?
We're replacing against a temporary valve replacement.
That's the valve one,
Right.
okay. And engine 5, what are we doing? That was the electrical, right?
Engine 5 is still out of service.
What is our intent with engine 5 then?
We were working with some of the vendors, I believe Selectman Campusano looked to see if we get a number to just replace the pump on the truck, to see how much that would cost. And we're trying to get some quotes from vendors on that. We only have one quote so far, and they said it's gonna be $55,000 to $60,000 to do that work.
So when we get this loaner, we're servicing engine 1 and 6, but we're not talking about 5 just yet, because we're just in preliminary stages.
Right.
Correct.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
I would like this to have a sunset clause on it, only for remainder of this calendar year. I mean, this is, would that be acceptable?
I don't know why.
I would know why you do that, only because if something wets the bed in December or January or February, you have the ability to use it if you needed it.
As opposed to the other one, we're providing the chief, authority to do this forever. If that's what doing that with your eyes wide open, fine, I just offer the opportunity to.
I guess I'll ask the question,
Well,
how long is your intent?
Well, again, I'd say I'm gonna evaluate it constantly to find out what we need. Obviously, as we work with this truck is in reserve status in the city of
Reason.
Manchester for a reason. It's tired. So to rely on a truck like that, we appreciate their generosity, but if we're gonna rely on it as a first-line piece of apparatus, we may be fixing it a lot too, so.
That was my next question. What if this one does have a large repair that comes up, and a pump goes, and they say it's $30,000?
I don't think we'd be liable for everything, but I'm sure, the Manchester Fire Department, we'd be talking to them.
We'd probably be liable for half of it. And you know something? That's the way it goes. We have this equipment, we're fortunate enough to have a piece of apparatus that's available to us from another community, and
We
you
would
wanna know
just take,
something?
we'll just take more recyclables then to pay it off.
Whatever. But I'm just saying, it's just the cost of doing business.
It is.
All right, again, if the motion is to accept a loaner truck from Manchester Fire Department during time of engine repairs, that would compartmentalize it a little bit more. If that is the motion, if it's so moved, then it would, do you wanna make that motion?
Well, I don't know, is it only engine repairs, or are we also looking at, like, a pump is not an engine? The reason why I have a concern on that, what you added,
Right, well,
Why-
I'm just reading what it
A
says.
period of time where the engine's gonna be out of service for 1 week or more.
Again, if it's the trucks, if the city needs the truck back for their own needs, then they're gonna have to take the truck back. And they've gotta protect their city also.
what if the motion is to accept the truck while the others are out for repair?
That's fine. So moved, that's moved, and it's seconded by anyone?
Yes,
Seconded by Selectman Pierce. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? 4-0.
Thank you.
All right, unless there's anything else, well, accept the motion, to go into non-public session. We'll do the first one for the, police chief, which I believe that would be personnel related, right? A. So I need a motion to go into non-public session, RSA 91-A, Roman, :3, Roman numeral 2A. Moved and seconded.
Seconded.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Roll call.
Aye.
Yes.
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 All right. We'll go next door.